Ayn Rand, 1905 to 1982. In 1942, under pressure to finish what would become her breakthrough novel, The Fountainhead, Rand turned to a doctor to help her overcome her chronic fatigue. He prescribed Benzedrine, a still relatively new drug at the time, to boost her energy levels. It did the trick. According to the biographer Anne C. Heller, Rand spent years planning and composing the first third of her novel. Over the next 12 months, fueled by Benzedrine pills, she averaged a chapter a week. Her writing routine during this period was grueling. She wrote day and night, sometimes neglecting to go to bed for days. She took naps on the couch in her clothes instead. At one point, she worked for 30 hours straight, pausing only to eat the meals prepared by her husband or to read a new passage and discuss bits of dialogue. Even when she got stuck, Rand stayed at her desk. A typist who later worked with Rand recalled her habits. She was very disciplined. She seldom left her desk. If she had a problem with the writing, if she had what she called the squirms, she solved the problem at her desk. She didn't get up and pace around the apartment or wait for inspiration or turn on the radio or television. She wasn't writing every minute. Once I heard flapping coming from the study. She was playing solitaire. She might read the newspaper. At times I entered the study to find her sitting with her elbows on the desk, resting her chin on her hands, looking out the window, smoking and thinking. The Benzedrine helped Rand push through the last stages of the Fountainhead, but it soon became a crutch. She would continue to use amphetamines for the next 3 decades, even as her overuse led to mood swings, irritability, emotional outbursts, and paranoia, traits Rand was susceptible to even without drugs. Oh, hello there. I didn't see you guys come in. Welcome to Bitcoin Talk Show. We were just checking out a little bit more of Daily Rituals, a book about artists and what they do in the morning, what they do every day, how they make their work. Interesting stuff. Be sure to give us a thumbs up and a share, but let's just get right into it today. We've got an exciting show for you. Today is Monday, July 2nd, 2018. This is Bitcoin Talk Show. The price of Bitcoin is up 4.22% in the last 24 hours, with a last of 6,619, a high of 6,655, and a low of 6,264. That's $1 for 15,113 Satoshis. Bitcoin kicks off the second half of the year with a 12% rally. Bitcoin bounced back 12% from its lows last week, hitting a high of 6,609 on Monday. The entire cryptocurrency market has struggled to find its footing in 2018, with a 57% drop in total value this year. It remains to be seen whether Bitcoin will live up to some of the bullish calls it made earlier this year, including Fundstrat Global Research's Tom Lee's 25,000 a year and target. Myth busting. Why Bitcoin can never go to zero. Bitcoin's polarizing effect has Bitcoin, that's bad writing. All right. Number of commenters, Bitcoin booming, 10 years old. It's going down. Let's see. Why can't it go to zero? He doesn't say. Intrinsically unstoppable. While its adoption continues to grow and become more entrenched as a technology and a financial system in everyday life, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, as well as blockchain, I don't know about that, becomes harder and harder to simply move on from. But even more than that, now that it is becoming established, it is also showing that it is harder to kill, say, than a stock, a technological fad, or countless other comparisons, which can die. Many will compare Bitcoin to a company or a stock, which can go to zero, as a reason not to invest in it. However, Bitcoin is decentralized and autonomous. There is not one man, one group, one board of directors that can run it into the ground. On the same note, it is almost impossible to stop, as regulators are finding out. With the likes of China and others trying to ban Bitcoin outright, they are discovering that they are not fighting anything tangible. Like many have said, fighting Bitcoin is like trying to hold back water. It just slips through your fingers. Back above 6K, Bitcoin's bull reversal is a work in progress. And full disclosure, it looks like this article was written before the jump to 6,600. So we'll take this with a grain of salt. As he says, it's too early to call a short term bearish to bullish trend change, as the bulls are yet to violate the series of lower price highs and lower price lows, as represented by the falling channel bearish setup seen in the chart below. We can see, though, that this recent jump up to 66 might push us out of this bearish channel as he's discussing. If we look at the hourly chart, same thing. Up to 66 might push us out of this channel. So they're going to have to draw some new lines on the chart and tell us about what the new lines mean. The view. The sell-off from the May 21st high of 9,990 seems to have ended. However, only a bullish falling channel breakout would confirm a short-term bearish to bullish trend change. Should Bitcoin cross the falling channel resistance at 64.50, which it seems like it did, then resistance lined at 68.48 did not do that, and $7,000 psychological hurdle will come into play. So I would say 6,800, 7,000, that's what we're looking for. On the downside, a break below 6,000 would kill the odds of a short-term bullish reversal. So that's out. That's not happening. A daily close below 5,755 would revive the bearish outlook and expose support at $5,400. So there it is. Did Satoshi Nakamoto write this book? Expert. A Wired investigation. And once again, the way to investigate this is not to cover it. They're giving all this press to something that is likely fake. Even they themselves haven't done any of the syntactical analysis with Nick Scabo. As it says here, as skeptics in the cryptocurrency community read people that don't get paid per click. Wired's just doing clickbait. Bloomberg's doing clickbait. Everybody wants to have their own article about the Satoshi Nakamoto book. Look for the dumbest one of them to publish an interview with this so-called fake Satoshi. Once again, why would real Satoshi do an interview? Why would he publish a book? Logically, it doesn't make any sense. As skeptics in the cryptocurrency community have repeatedly pointed out, the true Satoshi ought to have access to the cryptographic keys that control the first Bitcoins, coins that have stayed put for a decade. If someone purporting to be Nakamoto were to move one of those coins to a different address or sign something with the keys that only Satoshi has, that would be a pretty good form of verification. And this guy didn't do that. So why are you writing about him? Why are you giving press to something that is likely fake? Let's go down. Nick Scott. And again, don't even list Dorian here. Don't put Dorian Nakamoto in the suspects. That's ridiculous. Dorian's a nice guy, but he's not Satoshi. It's ridiculous to even say that. Let's see. There's a couple other good quotes in here. Let me go down and get them. Adam back, Wei Dai, yes, yes. But what's really important here is okay, so he thanked Hal Finney, and that's great. Here we go. Even Wired, which is, again, trying to sell you this story, trying to get you to click on it. Click me, click me. Given how much of the excerpt describes correspondence between crypto pioneers, it's striking that it only makes a passing mention of the work of Nick Scabo, one of the main members of the cryptographic community who worked on precursors to Bitcoin, and a figure who is often suspected of being Nakamoto. Adam Back, another cryptocurrency pioneer mentioned extensively in the new excerpt, says that many of the verifiable details in the story already exist in the public domain. Hello, making it hard to determine whether the writings reflect true firsthand knowledge or merely thorough research by a hoaxer. Ding! The new Nakamoto proxy was unable to answer specific questions posed by Back through Wired regarding Back's early correspondence with Nakamoto. Once again, this is a fake story. The media loves clickbait. I got this PDF sent to me months ago. I thought it was fake then. Apparently, the media doesn't have as high standards as I do. It's very sad. And as Hal Finney's widow says, they made all of Hal Finney's correspondence public. So you could use Hal Finney's correspondence to make believe like you talked to him. And like she says, she noted, and this is, again, she's not an expert here, but even Fran Finney believes it didn't include any unfakeable proof of the author's identity. We'd like it to be real, she said. but that doesn't make it real. So yeah, I don't know why Wired well, I do know why Wired is covering it. I think it's clickbait. I think it's a mistake. I think they're gonna write another article 3 weeks from now. Satoshi Nakamoto didn't write that book. Shocking. And what they'll do is maybe someone will do the syntactical analysis comparing this with the writing of Nick Scabo and find that it doesn't match at all. Once again, all of these details are public. Somebody will go through, do a line by line breakdown and say, hey, you can read this in the public, you can read this in the public, you can read this in the public. If Wired really wants to read a book written by Satoshi Nakamoto, they should get that one by Phil Champagne. I think it's called The Book of Satoshi. And it's a collection of Satoshi's actual emails. That's Satoshi's book. If you want to read what Satoshi said, read his emails that have been released publicly from the time period where he was active. If Satoshi wants to be active in another time period, he needs to sign something with his keys. If Satoshi doesn't sign it with his keys, I don't believe it's him. That's why we didn't believe that Craig Wright was Satoshi. That's why we only believe Dorian was Satoshi for a short time. And again, none of these people have provided claim with the keys. That's the whole point of the keys. Wired should just do an article explaining cryptography. They should say, this is how you generate private keys. This is how you sign messages. This is how it works. This is why you can tell without any, no benefit of the doubt. You can tell completely that this is Satoshi because he signed it with his keys or he used his email address. Instead, we're going to trust some domain name anonymously registered 3 days ago. Are you kidding? Over 800 cryptocurrencies are now dead as Bitcoin is 70% off its record high. Okay, so this doesn't connect together. These currencies were dead before. What's really happened here is that the media didn't know about the past because the media didn't do any research. Somebody came out with a cool website called deadcoins.com, and now the media has suddenly realized how many dead altcoins we're wading through. When I talk to you here, remember, I've walked through the corpses of Peercoin and Megacoin and Earthcoin, Terracoin, Namecoin, Feathercoin. Feather's still around kind of. But once again, like we've walked through these before. They've been here and they went to zero far before this. And remember, it's not that their price goes to zero. That's the problem. The problem with a dead coin is when the network fails. Right now, you've got your, let's call them shitty coins. You got shitty coins in your wallet and you want to send them to the shitty coin exchange so you can trade them in. Well, when the network breaks, those shitty coins are forever stuck in your wallet. You can send the transaction, but it simply won't work. That's when a coin dies. It's not about the price. It's about the network and the technology. As long as someone is still mining Bitcoin, you still have a good chance of sending your transaction. That makes the Bitcoin work. It's the network. It's the technology. It's not the price. Even theoretically, if the price of Bitcoin went to straight up zero, if people were still mining it, you could still send it around the network, even if it was just a souvenir or a free gift. Bitcoin breaks 6,500 as cryptocurrency market upswing continues. I think we're a little early for that, but I like the optimism. And there's the big green board from Coin360. Look at all those great coins. Remember, wasn't it just a month ago that Ethereum and Litecoin broke off from Bitcoin? Guys, remember that? Oh, they're all different now. They're all different. They're acting differently. But yeah, they're also talking in the chat that one of the major sources for this Satoshi was Mike Hearn. The easiest way to do that is to pick up the phone, call Mike Hearn. Did you have these conversations with a 14-year-old or a 20-year-old Satoshi or whatever it is? Media, do your job, right? Syntactical analysis with Nick Scabo. You haven't done it. You're going to do it in a later article. Interview with Mike Hearn. You haven't done it. You're going to do it in a later article. You're going to find out this is fake. Waste of our time. And if you like this show, don't forget to donate to the QR address on your screen or to the address down below. Thanks to our supporters on the World Crypto Network Patreon and the Mad Bitcoins Patreon. We're doing really well. The show is possible because of you. Maybe a little later, we'll have a reading of To Satoshi with Love, my novel, which is slowly getting more and more political. But so it goes. I wrote it in November of 2016. It was a very political time. It would be absurd to try to write a novel in that time period and not include what was going on in the papers. So, but you'll just have to wait and see and make your own opinions on that. And remember, it's just a story and it's fun. But right now, I want to go ahead and open up the call lines. If you're around and you've got Skype, you can go ahead and add us on World Crypto Network and give us a call. Tell me what you think. Do you think that that's really Satoshi? Or do you think that the media just loves clickbait and they can't wait to get you to click on the next thing? And the next thing is Satoshi, Satoshi, Satoshi. So they're going to write a series of articles. They're going to send out the investigative reporters. Somebody's going to get an interview with fake Satoshi number 2 or number 3, depending on your opinion. And then, Satoshi's going to release another book and he's going to release the second half. And once again, Satoshi, the things that we need from you. Number one, we need some kind of a pledge not to move those early coins and a reason why you didn't keep them or a plan for what you plan to do with them. The fact that this Satoshi doesn't argue the early coins point, that he doesn't give it to us, is like, what's the point, right? Satoshi was always really clear with his emails. He seemed very pragmatic. He was focused on the project, right? What does the project need from Satoshi? The project needs from Satoshi at this point, we need a clear decision about what's going to happen to these early coins, if he's keeping them, if he's going to spend them, if he's going to form a foundation, or if he's lost access to them on purpose. And we could kind of use some background on who Satoshi is. One of the reasons I was so excited on the first day that Craig Wright was declared Satoshi is that, at least on paper, Mr. Wright looks like an Australian, professor, right? He's a professor. He has multiple doctorates. He teaches in schools. He's educated. He studies computer science, right? He's a professional researcher. He's an intelligent man, at least on paper. That was exciting to me. We could tell people, hey, Satoshi was created, or Bitcoin was created by a great man. Bitcoin was created by an educated man. This is good for Bitcoin. This solves the mystery. Also, we need to know if Satoshi is alive or dead. Best case scenario here, we get some kind of a cryptographically signed message. Maybe it was a dead man switch that says, hey, Satoshi's passed. He's not going to move the keys. He destroyed them. And he used to study mathematics here, and he had dreams of this and thinks it's awesome. That'd be great. Like, adios, Satoshi. Thanks for your work. On the other hand, if Satoshi's live and he wants to come back into the project, we've talked many times of the problems of having $1 billion, the security problems, et cetera, et cetera. Also, the problems with being a cryptocurrency figurehead, right? You don't want to be Vitalik. You don't want to be the one in charge of rolling back the chain. If I was Satoshi, I wouldn't come back to do that job. Terrible job. I wouldn't want to expose myself to the kind of people that would want to take the $1 billion from me or whatever it is. And you have to imagine, Satoshi's certainly that smart. We're talking about a person who perfectly erased themselves. No one can be anonymous. It's practically impossible. But for the last 10 years, we have no idea who Satoshi Nakamoto is. And that's an incredible accomplishment. That's something that he's done that no one else has ever done. So good job, Satoshi. Stay quiet, stay hidden. And if you'd like to call us right now on Skype at World Crypto Network, that'd be great. Or ask us a question in the chat. We're going to check out what's going on in the chat. They're talking about the Brazil-Mexico soccer game. Sounds like a good one. Those are some great teams. It would be a huge upset if Mexico can pull it off. Kind of rooting for the Mexico in this, but Brazil plays a beautiful game of soccer. I haven't seen the latest team, but some of the previous teams, especially around 2000, with the 3 Rs, just were amazing with the passing and the precision. So tough team to beat. I don't have a girlfriend to give me drugs and make me write books. Modern women lack ambition, I guess. That's funny. There was probably a little shocking to people that Ayn Rand was a big Benzedrine advocate and that she was basically on amphetamines. I didn't expect to read that, but I found it in the Daily Rituals book, and I just thought it was fascinating. It was also interesting to hear yesterday about Hemingway working standing up at a bookcase with a typewriter on a bookshelf. It's fascinating to see how people work. Excuse me. It also says here that Craig Wright failed to prove that he didn't write that fake book. Oh, Craig Wright can't even prove anything. Let's see. Who else than anti-Bitcoin would mention Mike Hearn except to make us dislike the whole item? And yeah, if it is a big troll, picking Mike Hearn to be the early partner, and you can even see in the writing of the so-called Satoshi that he doesn't even trust Hearn. He's not crazy about Hearn afterwards. It seemed like he said Hearn was open-minded, but had his own points of view, something like that. It was funny. Let's see. Bart Simpson, something else on Stellar. That's great. Rob agrees. He says, no way it's Satoshi. And here we go. Audio Video Tweaker says there was one good article that said Satoshi is three people: an older economist, a middle aged cypherpunk, and a younger computer coder. The older was hypothesized as Milton Friedman. And I do agree that Milton Friedman talked about essentially a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, but so did all the cypherpunks and so did all the sci fi writers. I'm not trying to minimize Friedman's prediction, but I think a lot of people predicted that we would be going towards digital currency. There's something about the genius of Satoshi putting together the various tools to actually make one, and especially a decentralized one. That was the big thing. Let's see. Jump forward. Let's see. It says Alex says Satoshi is an idea, not a person. That's a good one. I hope that's it. But like I say, even though I don't really want Satoshi to come back, we still kind of need an answer to who has or what happened to the early coins, and some kind of background would be nice. This book says he's a 14-year-old when he gets involved. He's around 20 or 21 the time he's writing Bitcoin and releasing it. It's very tough. I'm not sure. Let's see. General Byzantian says, if you read Nick Scabo's article, A Measure of Sacrifice, it translates literally to the heartbeat behind the blocks, proof of work sacrifice, that you can't believe he isn't at least part of Satoshi. And yeah, Nick Scabo is still my number one candidate for Satoshi. As I talked about yesterday, he had a previous friendship with Hal Finney. This gives a good reason why Hal Finney would jump on the Bitcoin project and work on it so much. Uh, Otherwise, Hal Finney is essentially working on a project that copied his friend's project. And you've got to wonder about that. Do people have any loyalty? Some of them don't. So it's very possible. So, yeah, General says Scabo, Finney, plus some Australian Texan dude equals Satoshi. That's possible. The other strand goes down the Craig Wright route, and Craig Wright had a friend. I'm forgetting his name right now. I think it might be John. But he was a little crazy. He locked himself in his room and liked to pee in jars. That doesn't disqualify him. It seems like Craig Wright's friend might have been Satoshi, and then Craig Wright has just enough information around it, and he was very early in it, and that could also be a possible explanation. Although Craig Wright's friend John, sorry, I don't forgot his name. He doesn't really have the background. We're looking for someone with a really strong mathematical, cryptography, computer science type background. So that points to me more towards Scabo. Obviously, Adam Back had previous projects, and then the other thing is that Scabo is not mentioned in the Bitcoin white paper. And I know, when they made that decision, they were probably like, "Yeah, we won't mention me, and this will throw them off the thing," or something like that. Or I don't know. I guess on the basic level, you think that you should mention yourself because that will throw them off. But then you think maybe you shouldn't mention yourself because you don't want to be mentioned every time they mention Bitcoin. But we pretty much mention him every time we mention Bitcoin anyway. So it didn't really work, regardless of if it was a fake or not. So the Satoshi mystery continues. The mainstream media loves to cover it. Did he write this book? And remember, every question asked in a headline is no, 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 he didn't write that book. It would be cool if he did. Any thoughts on Kin? It says in the chat. I did an interview with the CEO of Kin, or the company Kick, I think, attached to it, about a year ago at the San Francisco Bitcoin meetup. You can check that here on the World Crypto Network in the playlist for the San Francisco Bitcoin meetup. I think it's an interesting project. I think recently I have to be more critical on how they technically rolled it out. I think that it started out as an ERC20 token, then they were going to make a Stellar token, then they were going to make a copy of Stellar that they own. So regardless of the technical merits of any of these arguments, I think they should have picked one and stuck with it. I think that they should have been able to see that the Ethereum network wouldn't scale. I don't think they needed CryptoKitties to know that, but that was their excuse. Then when they went to Stellar, it kind of felt like they might just be pumping some Stellar. And then when they decided to make a copy of Stellar, it got really confusing. So I've heard a lot of interesting things. Like the founder himself told me they want to challenge Facebook. This is their way to challenge Facebook. They need to raise a lot of money, give the money to the Kin Foundation, use the Kin Foundation to pay people to make plugins and code and things for Kin so that they can raise more money and compete with Facebook. And it's a circle, right? If Facebook released their own cryptocurrency, and if they didn't release it 3 different times, moving to 3 different technical platforms, they would be in a much better position than Kin. So, yeah, I don't know what Turnio is, so I can't do an interview with a person without promoting it. So it's tough, man. You can't really any of these projects, anybody who brings me random project, you probably have a bag full of it. So other than Bitcoin, which no one can print a bag full, you have to buy them. It's tough to trust anyone else in this space and to have real interest in interviewing them. If they wrote code, if they made something, I'm interested. Like I like the Blockstack guys and my friend from Mythos, interested in interviewing the Graphene guy. He's writing a Google Docs that you can use on Blockstack. It would be like a distributed version of Google Docs. That sounds good to me. But yeah, everything's just altcoin, altcoin. So. David says, all these random TA guys BSing idiots online makes me like this channel that much more. And I did want to slightly mention on yesterday's Bitcoin talk show that went on for an entire 3 hours, I don't think we mentioned the price once. I didn't know what the price was during that show. I didn't watch it going up and down. And I think we were the better for it. I think we had a great conversation. And who doesn't want all their private data locked in Facebook's blockchain forever for all to see? I'm sure they'd encrypt it first, but the encryption would likely fail or get cracked or have employee backdoors or something. Yeah, having your Facebook or your social data in a blockchain that can never be edited and removed sure does make those childish teenage mistakes last forever, huh? Oh, the TA guys are mostly bearish, it says. Well, I think they also have a weatherman quality to them. It's raining today, but it might be not raining tomorrow. And, it's partly cloudy. That's the best way to be, where you say, oh, if it does this, then it'll do that. But if it does that, then it will do this. And what did you really give me? I know all those things. Yes. Hello, caller. You're live on the World Crypto Network. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Hey, good afternoon, Thomas. It's Ricardo. I'm calling in from Paris.
Hey, Ricardo. How's it going in Paris?
Man, it's really humid here. It's super hot. It's just super cloudy as well. I just think it's probably because of controlled climate and stuff with the geoengineering. But besides the fact, you were just talking about the price and you hadn't talked about it yesterday. And, for the last 48 hours, I haven't even looked at it or thought about it either. And it does kind of make your day go a little bit lighter. I'm on the flip side where I'm super happy that I'm at a point where I know about the technology and I've been studying it for quite a while. And I didn't get in till very late because I was pretty timid about it. But when I did, it was the end of November, right before it peaked from 9 to, the end of December. Mm-hmm. And point in case is it doesn't really matter about the price because, like you said earlier, even if it went down to 0, you can still trade it. And people aren't buying iPhones because of Apple's stock price or on Google or on Amazon. They're using these applications and the products and technology because of the tech. They're not buying these picks because of the price of the stock. And you have to remember, everybody that's listening needs to remember that this is a big game. Stock markets, cryptocurrency, any market is a big game if you have a lot of money. I mean, put yourself in a ring of people who have up to 10,000, 50,000, $100,000 to just throw around. You, it's a game, you know? And so whether or not you look at the price, you need to realize that the technology speaks for itself. And there are probably many politicians, lawyers, people who are up in banks, who obviously are buying into it because look at the coin market cap, you know, and see where it's at. So it speaks for itself. The market's there, and whether or not some new technology is going to come in and make it easy to use, it's just a matter of time before it becomes scalable and usable. You know, with everything that's being used right now, the Network. I think people shouldn't worry about the price, but if they're not getting in as soon as they can, then that's, well, either their own mistake or maybe their own decision.
Well, and remember with Bitcoin, you're actually getting the technology now. When you get the Bitcoin and you put it in your hardware wallet and you own the private keys, that's it. You just use Bitcoin. A lot of these other projects like EOS, for a full year, it was an ERC20 token. Even the KIN project that we were talking about started out as an ERC20, became a Stellar token, became a full copy of Stellar. And I haven't read about them recently, so I don't know that they've changed again, but it's entirely possible. That's how technically weak these other projects are compared to Bitcoin. Bitcoin's made its choices, made its decision. And while, yes, it's growing on the Lightning Network, thanks to the amazing user-activated soft fork and SegWit. But those are, future developments. The current Bitcoin, it's pretty much good enough for a lot of digital store value, which is something that a lot of countries with an inflationary currency just don't have access to. So it's a good product now.
And if we want to talk about the price, because everybody wants to talk about it, look at other stocks, look at other goods like gold and metals. There's nothing that even comes close to what it is at the time yield that it's happened. I mean, this is a hiccup. You could see January, there's a drop from, or sorry, excuse me. You could see December as like this huge flutter that people realize it's such a big deal. And when you see something like that, then you need to just take a note. You don't need to buy in or believe the FUD or freak out. But I think people need to make responsible decisions. And I think to leave the power and the responsibilities that it's in, it's a mess. The world is a mess, and it's not because of the mass. It's because of those who have the control are keeping it a mess, because it keeps us divided. And I hate to be one of those people that's like, yo, go get Bitcoin, because for a long time, the reason I stood on the fence was because the whole idea of turning into a one world market or whatever it might be that becomes we're internationalists, or the idea that we're going to have one currency to rule them all. I hate to be that, be like, but at the same time, technology speaks for itself, and people, humanity have ruined this and created this control that has just ruined life. I mean, life shouldn't be like this. Life shouldn't be working 40 hours, 50 hours, 60 hours. I don't work that much. I mean, I'm an entrepreneur, so I do, and I don't. But at the same time, I feel so sad for people stuck in the corporate world. I feel bad for people who are nurses who work 3 16-hour days, or 4 12s, or whatever they do, and people who have multiple jobs, and you get out of school and you graduate, and then you just go back to a job where you get paid barely enough to pay your loans and stuff. It's a system that is just not okay, and to just sit and take it and not invest your time into something else, is you're the victim. And I mean, you're asking for it.
It definitely. Sorry, Echo. Why is it?
All right.
Sorry. Oh, thanks, man.
Take your time, mate. Take your time.
Let's see. Is it echoing? Okay. Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, I've had the same thing, and it moves slowly, right? It creeps in. When I was a kid, I was in college. I was working at a computer store, and I was working at the computer labs, and I was probably working about 12 to 16 hours a day. And I would just kind of go from one job to the other job to bed, from one job to the other job to bed. And it was okay, and I liked the people I worked with, and I got to fix computers and build computers and stuff. But at the end of it, I had this little bit of money that I spent on really nice thing. I got a 5.1 Dolby surround sound stereo system and a DVD player back in the day. And it was really cool. But even then, when I went in the car to buy the thing, I was like, my God, you know, I'm trading my life for this stereo. I'm trading 6 months of my life, working hard, grinding it out, you know, and I also got to eat and live and go to college and stuff. It wasn't that bad. But I'm like, yeah, this better be a good stereo. And yeah, I used that stereo for like 20 years. It was really good. As it turned out, I bought the extended warranty and they fixed it once, and it was a Sony. But still, that's the idea, is that, yeah, you're trading your life, you're giving it up for that money. And I also found when I worked for the law firm for about 7 years, you basically go to sleep, and that you're in this tunnel, and that the weekends are your freedom, and the Monday through Friday is your work, and
Yeah.
you can't seem to get out of it. You're on a treadmill, and you know, they might be paying you well and you get benefits and stuff. It's cool, and they're nice people sometimes that you work for, and sometimes they're not. But yeah, I really do agree that, yeah, Bitcoin could help free you. These crazy investments, maybe you roll the dice on some altcoins and you get a little freedom there. Whatever you can do to free yourself. And to get back to what I was talking about with Brian Eno and Van Gogh yesterday, don't have a job, do what you want to do. You'll feel more fulfilled. Like I had the choice whether or not to do this show today. I do have some doctor's appointments, and you know, things are going, you know, they're developing along. I'm doing tests and things, but I wanted to do this show, right? I like doing this show. This is what I want to do, as not as a job, but as a like a vocation. And maybe that's not better, you know, but as a quest, something like that. And I don't know what your quest is. I don't know what your dream is. I also wanted to, you know, write books and stuff, so I did that too. So I'm pretty pleased with it. You know, I think Bitcoin's helping me achieve my dreams, and I want to help other people achieve their dreams. And if you have a little Bitcoin or a little fiat set aside for safekeeping, that's good. You're in a better position now, and it can help get you out of that desk, because I can see you there sitting at the desk, listening to your headphones, pretending to be working, getting really, really, really good at Tetris. It seems like a good skill, but you're not going to impress anybody with your Tetris skills. So.
Uh, Absolutely. You said something that struck a point. I value time more than money. And I've been on all different types of fiat currency rates in different countries. But in the end, every country that I've noticed, the more people that value their time, it's like such a different feeling. I have more time to my days, and I work and I get paid more for the shorter amount of time that I do. So, but my advocacy is all about like your time. And if you can invest in Bitcoin and it flips and everything drops, and people who are working only have to work harder to gain the money because the money has just dropped, and it's stuck on the currency system where that you have to work. I mean, you think about it. And somebody said this back a while back, and I remember this: a slave job, like your job, your slave job, like you have your slave job and you go every single day and you're a slave to it. And I was just like, that's terrible. And I went to school for nursing, and I just couldn't do it in America. I just couldn't do it. You know, there had so many
Well,
things
that's
against it.
another one where they're like, there's so many jobs in nursing. There's so many jobs in computer programming. You're a smart guy. Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And you kind of get pushed down these paths. And for me, the computer science classes, at least at my school, were taught in a way where they wanted you to drop out. They wanted to scare you away. And assembly class was really hard. And then for you, what was it about nursing that you couldn't do?
Well, it was just more the ethics because of the vaccinations and everything that I found out about the drugs that are being sold to the hospitals. That
Mhm.
system, the drugs being sold to hospitals is a huge thing in itself. I mean, you could just report on that for like, I could do a series on it. But I did an internship at OHSU, which is the Oregon Health Science University, and I'd have to wake up. I live really far from Portland, and I had
Mm.
to go and like 4 in the morning and take 2 buses and take a train, and I was like there for 8 hours, and I was like, this is terrible. I mean, it's good that we need nurses. Don't get it wrong. But what I'm saying is that after 2 years of going to school and realizing that wasn't what I wanted to do, and I wouldn't want a slave job, you know, I was like, I need to do something that's for me. And so I started getting on this entrepreneurial like walk of life, you know, and
Mhm.
it's been super hard and it's super uncomfortable and scary because you're on, it's almost like you're in the dark walking and you just, hopefully, you know, you don't step off the edge. And it's such a good experience in the end because now I'm like, okay, now I can take my money and I can invest it into, well, I mean, whatever it might be, but I'm investing it into cryptocurrency and Bitcoin specifically because I like having my time, and I see it on my walk of life as an addition to that. Not only an addition, but a new phase into being able to spend more time. And I just moved to France, and it's insane. Everybody here is all about their time. They've got like the whole month of May is pretty much a holiday, and they've got so many months off. I mean, days off, excuse me. And it's a bit odd to me because I'm used to having 3 or 4 jobs, being an American. And when you're traveling abroad, you have to have constant, like, just dumb jobs, you know, to make money. And which is fine because I feel like traveling alone is just, that's the time there is an experience itself. But what I was saying about cryptocurrency is that it's a chance for people to look at their time in a different way. You know, when you go to work, you're valued. You're like a Coca-Cola. You're valued for that long of a day for this much. They can get you for that much. And there you go. And they put their coin in, there comes, there you go, and you do your work. And then that's your day. You know, I was like, that's terrible. I mean, so
Well, I would work for the lawyers, and then when I would get off in the evenings and weekends, I would edit videos and try to put together for political causes and things that I supported at the time, and that was it. And then you would just go right back to work, you know.
yeah, so your work is your life, and like it's just like and when everybody like looks at entrepreneurs and these people who are doing it the opposite way as these great people, but it's not that. I mean, you could do anything and you can be great. You could start by selling something you make on the side, whether it's food or your, you know, there's just so many services that people don't realize. People actually want people to person in contact. They want that you want that to present to you, but it's the hardest because it's the true test of self is being able to overcome doubt within somebody else, within yourself, with or yourself doubt. Because just to get to that point, you have to be like, no, even if I get knocked down, I'm going to get back up. Or if I fall off that wall, I'm going to climb back up it. And that is true self-worth. When you're in a job that's a slave job, it's comfort because you're going to it every day. You got your parking spot, you know, you're going to get a cup of coffee, you know, everything is going to happen. And you're like, 6, 7, 10 years down the road. My parents spent 40 years in one corporation and they made a lot of money, and it was in the computer business when it was booming, which it still is. But at the same point, I was like, I never got to see them, you know? So I was like, I can't do that. This is insane. That's just too much. So I value time more than money. And I think that cryptocurrency and Bitcoin can give you that because it's constantly moving at 24-hour market internationally. And if you just put $10 in, even a week, time cost, a dollar cost average, or, you know, maybe put a little bit more when it's dropped out below, you're like, oh my God. And then the next thing you know, you can like kind of quit your day job and just get a side job. And, you know, you just walk your own route, I guess.
Okay. Sorry, I'm distracted in the chat.
That's all right, mate. I'm
Uh,
actually going to look at the chat when I'm talking because it's,
Paul is
yeah.
talking about some kind of disaster in Thailand where 12 kids were found alive and they were buried alive with their football coach. So I don't know if the bus crashed off a thing or something, but we'll try to figure that one out. Sorry, I want to understand what's going on, and sometimes I don't know. But
Well,
like you were saying, I had a similar thing at
I
the
wouldn't
start.
be surprised about Thailand and Asian countries. There's so much kids being what's it called, trafficked. Third world
Okay.
countries, that's their market is either drugs or kids. I'm sorry to say that, but I lived in the third world and I lived there for 5 years, and even Colombia has it. And so just be aware that this is good though. This is all this light being happened. I think that's why people need to realize the systems that stand in place now are not going to be there for long. And if they are, they're driving the price down. And that's my opinion, but whatever.
Yeah, and I'm glad the kids were found safe. I don't know what happened to them before, but I'm glad they're okay now. But like you were saying, when I was working at the startup, there were the couple of startups. Everybody wanted to be so focused on their work, and they didn't want to be varied, and they didn't want to be, interested in books or interested in movies or anything on their spare time. I think they really wanted you to commit like 150 or 200% to this job, and it was all about how later on they would give you stock options, and later on you'd be able to cash in those stock options. It was all this delayed gratification. And I'd always grown up where it was, you're supposed to be varied and you're supposed to have hobbies and interests. And even at the law firm, they had a pretty good idea of work-life balance, right? Where you get your time is your time. and they wouldn't try to encroach on it. Where the startups had the opposite thing. They wanted all your time. And, you know, I tried to do some shows on this network and keep things going and keep in contact with my friends and be involved in the local Bitcoin community and all these things. And I thought these were really good things, making me more varied, you know, and different and spread out. I'm not sure they did. So I'm very questionable about these startups now. I guess maybe they're okay for really young people that haven't really seen the world. But if you want to be worldly and interesting, I don't think you're working at a startup. If you want to be cutthroat and single focused and have blinders on like one of those horses where they can only see straight ahead and the guy just keeps whipping them, I think that's working at a startup. So yeah, I don't feel so good about it from the inside as I do from the outside.
Boy, that's an interesting one. There's just there's the Shark Tanks at startups, you know, those that how it's just massive money, and then there's like the little ones that it's like somebody thought of a camera that could be on a drone, and that's huge, you know. That's yeah, startups are cool. I've always stuck to people and food, so I've always worked in restaurants, I've worked in bars, I've always been like the kitchen hand, the dish hand, just any just crap job, because in the end, like you're still kind of dealing with people. Whereas if I'm selling something, or if I have to like be at a corporation and I'm spending my time to make the corporation bigger, which I feel like is selling myself, I'm like, when you're like calling people all day long, you know, trying to get sales, and I couldn't, a corporation, it just doesn't, it does not, it doesn't, the sound does not sound with me.
Also on the first startup, I negotiated my salary up. That was kind of an okay idea. I don't know. I got mixed results from different people. Some people thought that negotiating my salary up put a target on me. And then when the numbers or whatever didn't work out, they were able to blame me. But the next startup negotiated my salary down, of course, saying they'd raise it later. And I don't think that worked either, because then I was getting less money and it just didn't feel as good. You need a lot of money to live in San Francisco, and you know, it's tough there. And you know, you can't really focus good if you don't have your bases covered. But like
Yeah.
you said, I agree with you on
The
the Europeans and the month off and all that. I'm incredibly envious of that. Every year, I would get about a week off from the lawyers, and I would go to Burning Man. I'd get to turn off my phone and turn off my computer and hang out with some cool people and do some cool things. And I would always meet Europeans, and they were always like, "Oh yeah, we're on a month-long vacation in America. We're going to Grand Canyon. We went to all these places." And I'm like, I live in America. You know, I've been to the Grand Canyon 20 years ago. You know, I've never been in recently. And it's just so amazing the different lifestyle they have there. And people are trying to blame it now with austerity measures and all these kind of things. But I still felt it was more human first when I was there. It was less business first.
Yeah, that's the one thing I've noticed when I left America was it's all about, well, the more in my travels, it's become like that. I started in Australia, and it was like I was living in Sydney for a couple of years and moved around a bit. And I've just noticed that they just value time so much more. It's very much like America. It's like America 2.0, to be honest with you. But then I moved to New Zealand, and it was like the same thing, but like more island time, and people are super laid back, and it's almost like people are just too lazy, couldn't be bothered. And now I'm in Europe, and it's like quite a mixture, you know? So I think people need to look at their time and their money and maybe figure out how to increase more time, and I mean, still have the same amount and with the same amount of money, you know? If you can live off what you're living off when you're comfortable, but you can get more time, wouldn't that be great? You know, because I reckon with that more time, you could make more money. I don't know.
Well, and I think ideas like that are expressed in Tim Ferriss's first book, The 4 Hour Work Week. And Tim Ferriss basically, like you said, you have to have a side hustle. So you're doing your main job, but you're doing your side job and you're doing your other side job. And maybe eventually one of these could be a
I lost
passive
him.
source of income.
Thomas, I lost you.
Oh, I'm still here. I don't know. But no, I
Uh,
was talking about side jobs and passive income. And I think that's a good
let me
way to
call you
try to
back.
get out of the system. And like you're saying, agorism and trying to sell things for yourself, trying to support yourself through, you know, good things. Let's see. I think we lost Rico. Hello, Ricardo, back with us?
Yeah,
All
mate.
right. Good. So yeah, we're just talking about the 4 hour work week and the importance of a side hustle. But I also wanted to talk about what you mentioned there a little bit is commuting. When I first started in San Francisco, just like you said, I was on the train for an hour. I was on the BART for an hour. I walked for half an hour. I was doing about 2.5 hours in the morning, 2.5 hours in the evening. And when I got home, I went straight to bed, woke up the next day at 5 a.m. and did it all over again. And commuting will wear you out. They did a study where they said the only thing across the board which improves your life and improves everyone's life is living close to work. That's the one variable that you can control that will make your life better, no matter what you do, no matter your situation. So I'm very much against commuting. I think it's amazing if you could live next door, or especially think about Europe and Amsterdam. My God, you could ride your bike to work. Oh, amazing. Exercise, fresh air, sunshine, and you go to work and then you get to do it again in the evening. Just amazing. They have bike paths everywhere, even better than Davis, California, where I used to live. So, yeah, Amsterdam, Copenhagen, places where you can ride your bike. Thank goodness.
Commuting's a mother, definitely. I grew up
Mhm.
in Portland, and was amazing. I have to admit, but uh, yeah, when you travel, you get to see. I mean, people spend so much time in their cars. I moved to LA for a year, and I spent like at least 2 or 3 hours every single day in my car, and I was just in shock. You're just 6-lane highways, and it was. I literally lived in my car most of the time. I spent my time working 2 jobs to survive, to live, to party, and it was
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
what was the point, at the same time, I was like, okay, well, they got old after a year. But commuting is part of the job. That's part of your job. um, I do fitness and training and massage therapy, and
mhm,
so when I get there, I start my job, so I get paid, but I also have to get there,
mhm.
so I do charge more, if it's outside a certain parameter. But at the
Sure,
same time, um, something I wanted to talk about with this on the side has nothing to do with this, but it would be really
sure.
cool if people could pay me in Bitcoin. That'd be cool. But Europeans just aren't. They're so there's a handful of people that are really into it, and then the rest are kind of just completely lost, and they're into soccer, which I think is awesome. But what I say is time in travel is part of the job,
Mhm.
and yeah, America, man, it's massive. What you get in Europe is what all of Europe is America. So it's just like when you travel here, it's yeah, it's interesting traveling. Yeah, definitely.
Well, and even then, I know what you're saying because I spent about 3 years in San Francisco, and I didn't even bring my car. Right? I mean, it was an old beater car and everything, but still, I just left it in Sacramento, and I took the bus. I had this great app on my phone called Scoot. Before this whole little itty bitty scooter thing took over the world, you could rent a motor scooter, like a moped or whatever, and or a Vespa like that, and you could drive it around the city and just leave it somewhere and then go to your work and then find another scooter, ride it home. And of course, I did Lyft and Uber all the time. And I just didn't have a car for 3 years, and it was fantastic. Then I went to Europe and I found out what it was really supposed to be like, right? Amsterdam, for example, is full of mass transit. There's a light rail that will take you pretty much anywhere you want to go. Plus, there's buses. Plus, of course, there's bike lanes everywhere. Everywhere else that I went in Europe, massive trains took me from city to city, or I used a cheap service called Flixbus. That was a really good deal. If you're going to travel Europe, Flixbus, really cheap. And it's completely different. But now, to add one more thing to it, well, Sacramento's like this, but Las Vegas even more so. It's a car culture. It's all spread out. There's 6-lane roads with 3 on each side, and
Mm.
everything is a strip mall. Everything stretches out forever. We have every possible chain and corporate restaurant are now available to me after years of eating just the San Francisco, kind of fancy food or whatever. There it is.
That's funny. Hold on a second. Sorry, it's 6 o'clock here.
Okay,
Um,
it's kind of fun.
yeah, sorry, last one. Okay. Anyways, so yeah, every time I talk to like my clients, because they're all fascinated by America. If I was
Uh-huh.
English, my wife's Parisian, and she was like, "You're really lucky you're not English because Parisians prefer Americans, so French people like Americans." And I
Well,
was like,
that's
"Okay."
good.
But they're always like, "Oh, America is just massive," and everybody like when I lived in Australia, people are like, LA, I'm going to LA. And they're like, it's like such a big deal to America is the world's like theme park. It's got everything. Honestly, and having that much control, you can see why the system has been so corrupted because you have to have a lot of strings to pull in order to control that such a huge mass, and it leads the way in so many things, and it's so intertwined that it's in itself is it's a world. It's a world, and everything is massive there. Yeah, it's massive. When you like when I went to Dallas Airport, I've only been to Dallas Airport. I haven't spent much time in Texas, but I was really shocked because it's the first time I'd seen the plane go over the freeway, and I was like, "Whoa, that must be weird driving underneath these planes and seeing them like rolling over you as a freeway." So I thought that was kind of cool. But yeah, America is the land of giants when it comes to the lifestyle you can have.
Well, I really, there's no reason to be surprised for it, but when I was in Europe, I was surprised at the extent of American culture. Every shop window I looked in was Marvel Comics and the new movies and the Star Wars toys and Lord of the Rings, these franchises, which are obvious American inventions filmed in Hollywood or whatever. They took over the whole world. So it was pretty interesting the way, and a lot of my friends in Europe that I met and became friends with, we bonded over Star Trek. We had similar experiences from watching Voyager, Deep Space Nine, and we could discuss these, even though they lived in Vienna and I lived in Sacramento. It was
Big Nine.
just the same.
I
So
love this
yeah,
show.
yeah, it was good. I watched it the whole thing again recently, and I hadn't made it through before, but I made it through this time, and I'm still mixed on it. I actually think Voyager's better, and of course Next Gen, and then TOS above that. But and I watched Enterprise too. I thought it was okay. It started to get better towards the end, but yeah, no,
I
we can
spent
all.
most of my time with, yeah, watching in the 90s. I spent most of my time with my parents watching Enterprise or Seinfeld or some. That was like what you did when you're not working. What do? You watch TV or you watch the
That's it.
screen. So it hasn't changed.
And I had the problem where I would go to work and stare at the screen all day, and then I'd go home and stare at the screen all day, and so forth and so forth. So
Yeah, that's one thing. Yeah, I don't have to stare at screens when I work, which is nice. Well, when I'm working with people, but I have to stare at screens when I'm like, I do other things, like I create content. I don't know if I'm allowed to. Can I say my channel on here?
yeah, of course. Tell them about your channel, Rico.
Okay,
It's
cool.
cool.
My name's Ricardo, and I started Rico Coin Report like maybe in May of this year, and I didn't really want to be out there because I think that when you put yourself out there, you're putting yourself out there literally to that. And I left America because of my opinions on the whole system, and I was like, okay, I'll go to Australia, and it's the exact same thing there, same there, and New Zealand's even more like America, which is weird. But Europe is just kind of a side thing. What I was saying was that I just wanted to track my experience and my knowledge and content with other people. And so the main thing I talk about on my channel is Bitcoin, but and cryptocurrencies. But
Mhm.
I do like to talk about like water and meat and the vegetables and everything that can affect you right now. And so that's kind of because you were saying earlier your goal, your path in life, or your
Sure.
whatever in life that
Mhm.
you're supposed to reach. And my thing is just to tell people about things. And I've written quite extensively, but I don't ever put the stuff out that I write. And I actually used to write nonfiction,
Uh-huh.
fiction, excuse me,
Sure.
and just like creative stories about like. I think that when you write about like comics, and superheroes, you're actually kind
Uh-huh.
of talking about like some like personal self, like a second, not character, but like character within yourself. If you could be this. And I used
Sure.
to write about that, and I was like, why? Because we all want to be like good in the world, and we would all love to be Superman, I think. But I think that we can all be Supermen and Superwomen just
Mhm.
by trying to make the best actions on your decisions, on your thoughts. So if you're thinking something, that thought can lead to something that's a decision that's a good decision, and that can lead to another thought that's a good decision. So it's a chain of dominoes, and you hit one. And if you keep making good decisions and keep these thoughts keep rolling, you doing the right things instead of being like, I don't think I should, or and then you still do it, then you're kind of like your own villain, you know? So I was like, I kind of wanted, and it took me a long time to create content, you know? So I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. So I created a channel called Rico Coin Report. I'm in the chat. I've been watching for quite a while, and I finally started some content. It's just whatever. If you guys want to watch, you're more than welcome. Go to my channel, Rico Coin Report. And I actually talk about other things, like other platforms like yours.org. And probably shouldn't say these things on because it makes it real, but just different platforms that you could be using that can you guys can get into, you know, rather than just like, I call it fake book, or you know, Insta pleasuregram, where you just get that like, or you know, so you know, it's just me, and I wanted to share my information, but I didn't know if you could do that on other people's channels.
No, it's fine. It's good to share your channel and to let other people know what you're doing. And what I also like that you brought up there is that you do talk about Bitcoin, but you also have your own personal views that you're bringing to it. And I'm having some people proofread my book, To Satoshi with Love, and they're worried that it gets too political. And I don't really have anything I can do about that, right? I have my own political views and beliefs, and I wrote it during November 2016. So it was a pretty tough time for politics, and you got to take your own sides. But what else could I do? I mean, I have to be who I am. I have to express my truth.
You got
And
to
in
be
a
true
lot
to
of ways,
yourself, mate.
that's
Yeah.
right. And
Yeah.
people will know. They'll be like, oh, well, I disagree with him. Sorry, go ahead, Rico.
No, I'm just going. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. So I would say, you know, people can say they disagree with me or whatever, and that's totally fine. But I can't not express, you know, my opinions on things. And in November 2016, I wasn't crazy about Mr. Trump, and I think he's not a fan of immigrants, and I think that's gotten worse. And I think if you read the book, you'll get those ideas. And in a lot of ways, I like the work of Ayn Rand. I kind of disagree with her now, but when I was a kid, I used to read her, and she has this way of mixing her philosophy into her fiction. And I kind of wanted to do that myself. So I gave it a shot, you know? So and we'll just see how it goes. And people have to, you know, grain of salt, take it and everything. And if you don't like the way the book goes or whatever, that's okay. You don't have to hate me. You can if you want. But you know, we just all have to put it out there. And that's why I like that you can talk about food and health on your channel and mix it in with a Bitcoin, and maybe someone else has another personal cause they might talk about, like a weatherman wants to educate people in math and coding. I think that's a super goal. Andreas wants to write books about things and educate people. I think that's great. So all those kind of things, you just got to be out there. And like we said before the other day, everyone on the internet is smarter than you. So if you come out to the internet and you say you're the smartest one and you know everything, they are going to slam you down so hard. I don't ever want to do that. I don't ever want to be saying like, I know it all about this, I know it all about that. I mean, sometimes I got some knowledge, sometimes I got some quotes, but I don't know it all. And there are people out there that know it all, and they're telling you everything, and they'll hog the whole chat. And that's not good. I'd be careful around those people.
Yeah, thank you for that information. You had said something about Ayn Rand. She's amazing, but I agreed. The most amazing people in the world sometimes are the craziest or the most ludicrous people, or the person that's least well spoken for. I mean, I look at Tesla and I often think about him because there's so many great people that don't realize how great they are because the world around them crushes them down. So I think that people need to realize that even though all the fish are going one way, it's okay to go against the stream. And it's actually sometimes better because, you know, I look at it as time and like fiat. And my dad was an economics major, and that's why I like math Nicholson, because he's really smart. And I used to have German roommates, and they are very smart. But the same thing is that yeah, people need to realize the power's in them, you know, and we all have the power. And yeah, you may not agree with the book or the way that the people that are proofreading your work, but at the same time, that is you. And it's kind of like, let's just say Star Wars was written completely different, you know, the whole world would be different. Or, you know, let's say that Hitler had done something different, you know, and he let somebody else. And I'm not saying anything good about Hitler or bad, because I've got my own opinions on that too. But what I'm saying is that great minds are the way they are because so many people disagreed with them and they did what they wanted to do, not because of what the people pulling the strings told you to do. And people that are getting their strings pulled, you get to see them in the news when they get opted out by the rest of them in the crowd, or into their own bad things, or whatever it might be. It's always like the person that is causing the trouble gets pointed out and ousted. And so I think people need to realize it's better to lead by mistaken example rather than just follow, and then I don't even know where you end up if you follow too far, because then maybe you're just not living your own life at the end of it all. You kind of wake up and you're like, this isn't me. What am I doing? So I think maybe that's why people have midlife crises. But I just think people need to take the power themselves, because that's it. That's his power. Don't let anybody else, your others, people's opinions, the opinions of your parents, the opinions of if you have a sibling or twin or anybody, don't let them feel you down. And it's okay to feel down, or feel down about yourself. But at the same time, you need to realize that you gotta blow your own bubble up. You gotta rise to your own whatever you want in life, so people are always going to push you down. And so that's kind of the thing about it in life, I think, in all of it all. But I think it's special for that reason, because a lot of us are kind of like, wake up, and everybody else is like, I'd rather just stay stuck in the system that I hate. It's like eating from the hand that is killing you, I guess.
Well, and one thing I think people should do right now is go ahead and have your midlife crisis early. If you're not happy with what you're doing, don't do it for 10 years and then freak out. Freak out now. Don't have a panic attack. Breathe deeply. Drink some water. It's going to be okay. You can make choices still. You got time. But yeah, you need to get in a position where you're doing what you want to do and you're happy with it. I was not in that position for a long time, and I know what it feels like. And it's demoralizing, and you don't feel like you're connected to your community. And also, at my previous job, I was not really allowed to express my political views or my views about Bitcoin or anything. So this can hold you back. This can make you not a contributor, not a person that talks to the network. And I don't want to be that. I want to be a person that talks to the network, whether it's about my political views or my fun novel or anything. And just a couple of negative comments in the chat. They're like, just because I don't like Trump doesn't mean that I prefer Hillary. I want to say that. Like, Trump can be bad. Hillary can also be
Yeah.
bad.
Oh my God, that's a hard one.
Lesser of two evils.
American people are always like, they just instantly assume that you're all about Trump.
And then also, I just wanted to respond. He says, did anyone say Mr. Obama when he was in office? And I would say, God, I wish they would call him Mr. Obama. They said he was born in Kenya. They said he was a socialist. They said he was a Muslim. I don't know if you've forgotten that, but you can go back and read the articles. I think a lot of that was also spread by Mr. Trump. So there's a lot going on out there. And yeah, I also think that George W. Bush should also be referred to as Mr. Bush. For specific and factual reasons. But I do think it is a title of respect, even if it's not the right one. But it also looks like we're joined by Max Hillerbrand. How's it going, Max? Say hello to Rico. We've got a party line going on.
Hey, Rico, I heard you speak and I was like, okay, no, I need to join right now. So I'm calling live from the belly of the beast. I am calling from Deutsche Bank, where I work.
Yeah,
I'm still in the
You're
office.
pretty quiet, Max. Maybe closer to your mouth or something. Go ahead.
Okay. Is it better? I hope it is.
Yeah, that's a little better.
I'm calling live from the belly of the beast. So yeah, I am at Deutsche Bank right now, and I'm really excited to call in. And I thought I might say hello. And I absolutely agree with what you've said so far. That it definitely is it's difficult to live or to work in an environment which you do not 100% support. And I realized that during my first job. I had my first job as a paper boy, and when I was like 8 or 9 years old, and it was horrible, and I hated it. And the thing is that if you do not like the things that you do, and you have to do them, this is really tough on you, and it really makes life not as easy and not as fun. So I promised myself to never ever work again at a job that I do not want to support 100%. And that's why I'm so happy that I now have more time to spend in Bitcoin, because it is just so fulfilling and it makes so much fun.
Max, I'm so glad you called in. So really quickly, before I forget, Max, I wanted to apologize. I didn't say, because we were talking on Twitter, and I just want to say it's a pleasure to finally call in and be able to talk to you. Yeah, we got to cross borders sometimes. I've been to Germany, so we should definitely link up, and we could call in from when we rendezvous.
Oh yes, absolutely. We're gonna make a team up call then. That's good.
Yeah, that sounds great. We got to get both you guys on here at the same time more often. And I was just working on my European plans this morning. One of the three things that I need to go to Europe, I got this morning. I talked to my friend that does the live streaming, and he's confirmed that he's good to go for the HCPP Hackers Conference in Prague in October. Next, I just need to confirm with the organizer that we're good to go. Then, if I can try to confirm with Crypto HW Wallet if he wants to sponsor us again. And if he doesn't, I have to try to get another sponsor. But things are moving forward for a Mad Bitcoin's return to Europe. So.
Oh, that is fantastic. We're all so much looking forward to welcoming you in beautiful Europe. And there are a lot of stuff to see, and I'm sure you had a great vacation last time, or great trip. I'm sure it was really busy, and we're gonna make sure that it's even better this time around.
It was fantastic, and everyone was great to me, and I look forward to going back and seeing all my old friends and even meeting some new friends like you guys. And like I said last time, people put me up on their couches, and it was really nice. And they took me around and showed me things, and it was a really personal trip to Europe, and I really appreciated it a lot. So.
Cool, Thomas. Let me interject really quick. My couch is open to you, and I write my own schedule. So if you come to Paris, there's more than enough museums to watch and check out. But we could even do a meetup in Paris. That would be awesome. I would love to just have somebody who's such an enthusiast. So I've got people who I'm like showing how to get Bitcoin, by like literally talking to them. 'Cause I have to take classes here for my visa. And it would be just so cool to be able to be like, this is a person who's from America who knows what I'm talking about, and there's so many people here who speak English, so it's kind of cool. But yeah, that you're more than welcome in Paris on my couch, mate.
Thanks so much, Ricardo. Yeah, and I definitely would continue. Like last time, I had like a little meetup in every city. I announced it on Twitter. If people came, they could just hang out in a bar. We all just talked Bitcoin. Great people. And I went to the Paris Bitcoin meetup, and it was pretty funny. I could understand the slides. Like I saw pictures of Vitalik or pictures of Mark Karpelès, and I think it said for Karpelès it was like the little idiot or something. And it was so funny though, because they were just talking rapid fire French in the speech. And I was just sitting there like letting it roll over my head, watching it fly by, like not understanding anything. But it was great to go and great to be welcomed by the Bitcoin community there. So
yeah, just not in agreement, and that's all that you have to do. Then you look at least smart.
I always like to pretend that I know the foreign language, but I never do. I always like, oh yes, yes. And really? No idea.
As long as you look at the person, well, in France, as long as you look at the person in the eye and just nod yes, you're okay. Unless they're a foreigner.
But yeah, it was a great time, and I hope to do it again soon. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And like guest at Nur said in the chat, I'm going to take everyone along with me again. I'll put lots of pictures on Twitter, and then I made videos after the fact last time, and I'll try to do that again. And I even saved museums to see. Like in Paris, I'm going to shock you that I didn't go to the Louvre. So I've got Louvre saved for me, and I also didn't go to the Musée d'Orsay because I kind of saw a lot of their work when it toured San Francisco. I know. I was afraid of the lines, and I also thought it'd be too crowded or something. I just had a crowding feel from it. But
well, I know the days to go, and when it's cheap and the time. So when you get to Paris, you are welcome, and I would love to be able to just actually maybe do a show here. That would be amazing. So you're welcome here when you come to Europe.
Sounds great, man. I'll be there for that. And then I've also got museums reserved in Berlin. By the time I got to Berlin, I felt that I'd seen all of the world's museums, and I was kind of exhausted from museums. So I took a break and just kind of hung out with like my host family in the neighborhood of Frederiksdal. And I just got to, feel what it was like to live in Berlin, not even really to be a tourist so much. So I've got Museum Island saved for me, multiple museums. Very exciting.
That's awesome.
Oh, yeah, and the museums at Museum Island in Berlin are really, really interesting because it has such a rich history. And Berlin itself, it's a modern city, but still a historical city, and a lot of stuff happened there, mainly because, well, it is Germany's capital.
Hmm.
And with the Cold War and everything, it is definitely an interesting place. And it is, the center of Bitcoin happening in Germany.
Yes.
So I'm sure that there will be many, many meetups to go to and interesting people to talk to.
And that's another thing I have saved for Germany. In another shocking thing about my trip, I never made it to room 77. I tried to go to the bar on Monday or something, and they were closed Monday. And I went to another bar nearby that also took Bitcoin because, as you guys know, the proprietor of room 77, he pretty much went door to door in his neighborhood and convinced all of his other bar owners and restaurant owners to take Bitcoin. And they had a whole Bitcoin district there for a while where everyone took Bitcoin. I actually got to meet him in Prague, but I didn't get a chance to go to his bar. So I'm going to make up for it, this next time, get all the things that I didn't do done. But again, there's so many things you could do in Europe. I think you could go there forever, but I think that a lot of other countries are that way too. And someday I'd love to go to Asia or I don't know, anywhere else in the world. You name it, I haven't been there, but I think it would be fun to visit.
I was gonna say is if this is all new to me about the bars accepting that whole little special like district for Bitcoin. That's super cool. Yeah, man, this is cool because I can get more information on what's happening in Europe, because that would be really cool for me to kind of be able to create my own thing as well. Maybe I could take along to you with you to Berlin. That's amazing.
Yeah, it'd be
And
great.
really interesting because good that you bring it up, that there are people that really go around and try to make those small business accept Bitcoin and try to show them the purpose of it. And that's actually what I've been doing for forever, and also not forever, since like a year or so. And it's really interesting because, well, I live on Bitcoin. I no longer use the euro since like 1.5 years. And this means that you have to talk to the people and you have to make them accept Bitcoin pretty much. Otherwise, you're not going to eat. And this is really a nice position to be in. And it's also really powerful if you can tell the store owner, well, I really would like to support you and I really would like to buy some stuff from you, but I think the euro is a shitty currency and I no longer want to use it. So unfortunately, if we want to make business, it has to be either in gold, silver, or Bitcoin, and now you can choose. And if they accept one of those things, well, then that's great. And we put one more person onto sound money, which is good. But if they don't, and you walk out of there, then that just shows them, wow, okay, this is really powerful. And oftentimes, I talked to the people and I told them, hey, I no longer use the euro. You can have gold, silver, or Bitcoin. And then they look at me funny and don't say, no, no, I don't want that. I want euro. And then said, well, okay, I'm sorry. Then I'm gotta go. And when you turn around and actually walk out of there, they are so shocked that you're this convinced of something that you will actually, not get something if you cannot pay in that currency. That most of the time they come around and continue talking to you, and then you show them how it works, and they're all in.
You always have to be willing to walk away. That's the best part of negotiation. I remember recently we were getting some new furniture for the house here in Las Vegas, and we'd spent, kind of all day at the furniture store picking things out. So they pretty much had us, but we were still negotiating with them hard. And at any point, we were willing to completely walk away. And once you give that up, you lose a lot of leverage, right? The deal shifts in the other person's favor. Being willing to walk away, and especially from a restaurant, people are hungry. It's tough to walk away, but that's an incredible strength that you have, Max, to do that.
Yeah, that's amazing, Max. We'll have to talk to you on the side, and I'll have to call you. But I'm an entrepreneur, and this is new for me in Europe. So that was the half of part was just learning the language, but the other part is being able to sell yourself, to somebody you don't know. And so when what you were just talking about, being able to go to a vendor and being like, yeah, I'll give you my services, or we can do business, but you get these three and none of them are fiat. That sounds the question alone right there should strike you odd, because there's no fiat, and that's incredible. I applaud you for that.
I
Well,
suppose
well,
the
thank you very
the other
much. But
option. The other option would be to negotiate directly with the employees to say, hey, I'll give you $20 in gold or $20 in Bitcoin. But then you would have to actually touch the euros, I guess. It depends how far Max wants to take this.
That's
Well,
true.
that's the other option that I do, because this most of the time only works when you talk to the manager or the owner of the store directly. So this also incentivizes you to shop locally, which I really like. So I always go to the farmers market and talk to the farmers that are selling their own goods, that, or their own vegetables that they actually grew on their own farm. And I ask them, hey, the euro is shitty, and most of them realize that. And if you give them the option, then this is really interesting. What I also like to do is, go to the bartender or the waitress and ask them, hey, okay, well, if I cannot pay officially in Bitcoin, do you want to have some, or do you want to have some gold? I'm gonna give you it, and then you're just gonna put some of your fiat in, and give it to your employee, your employer, so that he is even, and you got your hands on some quite anonymous Bitcoin, which is of course really nice, and with no hassle. And
That's
just always try to show it to them first. I always, if they are still skeptical, and it's a larger payment, I'm just gonna send them $1 or €2, so they can see it, and once they see it, they're hooked.
wow. That's a pretty cutthroat. I mean, I never. That's a new way of going at the system. So you don't deal with euros at all, or fiat,
Well,
because I deal with my clients directly, and I reckon if I did show the person what Bitcoin was, and a lot of my clients speak English, but I reckon I could get them to pay in cryptocurrency over time, because I've got you keep the same clients, but I guess you could. The thing is, what I'm having issues with is being able to get the. I use PayPal to get the money, or SEPA, or the bank system in America and in Europe is I think it's SEPA, or it's the other one,
yes,
the other name of it. Yeah, that's right. But
super.
in checks, yeah, exactly, in cash. So it's easy for me, but I would rather get paid in cryptocurrency and be able to educate my clients. And but it's also kind of like we're just services rendered. That's genius. But I don't think the websites right now are taking cryptocurrency. And if you know of something, something that could be like, yeah, you could. It's still hard for me to be able to get my clients to pay in cryptocurrency. Let's just say that. Yeah.
Yeah, good point. And it's definitely something else to accept cryptocurrency with your business. Uh, but again, here it's also your choice, and you can go the way and say like, okay, I only work with Bitcoin, and I no longer want to use the euro. And that's actually what I did with my cryptocurrency startup, with my Bitcoin startup. Um, that we decided in the team together that, hey, we are not even going to try to get a banking account, because we know how shitty it is to get one. Actually, I work at a bank, and
Yeah, it's not even
like it's horrible. It's so difficult to get a bank account.
for foreigners. It's literally impossible. Sorry,
It,
excuse
it
me.
is. It is really, absolutely. And I once tried to get a banking account in Liechtenstein for one of my companies, and it took them 6 months to open it. And during those 6 months, the deal that we were supposed to do actually, got canceled, because they said, well, no, we want to do the deal now, and we cannot wait 3 months longer. So actually, the slow bureaucracy with opening a banking account cost
Yes.
us a bunch of business.
The slow bureaucracy. Well said. That is a keystone of the system, and that is a massive moneymaker. It's a job creator, and it's a waste of time. It's not what cryptocurrency. Well, that's not what Bitcoin stands for. And you talked about this in your first talk, and you talked so long. You had so many points, but something you had said that is the bureaucracy, the paperwork behind it is ridiculous, and it in itself is just a part of the problem. It's a battle that we face in the war. And when you have Bitcoin, there's no bureaucracy. There is the ledger that has everything on it. The public ledger that has every transaction on it. And when you just to tie this back into the real Satoshi, the fact that those haven't been moved, obviously he's not going to. I with all hope that he doesn't come out and say who he is, because I don't believe it's one person. I believe it's a group of people and it's a team. That's my opinion. But the bureaucracy and the money and the paperwork is ridiculous. And I've had to deal with it with housing. It's impossible to get a house if you, or a place to live in Europe if you're not from Europe, and even if you are from Europe. So it's insane. But yeah, the system is controlled, and that's just a huge keystone of the freaking control. That's crazy. You're calling from there.
Very cool, guys. I don't know what else to say. You guys are doing good together.
Yeah, that's insane. That was Max. I mean, sorry if I can keep going. One more. I was just gonna say, okay. So I did think of a solution as you were talking. I will offer my clients that it's a bit hard to tax in Europe because it's off of what you make. So if you are making money off of cryptocurrency, you have to presume it as taxes. But if you're not, which I'm not, I'm just taking money and I'm putting it into it. I'm gonna take what I make in fiat and I convert it and I buy a dollar average in, which has been great in the sense of the $9,000 drop. I didn't think it'd get this point. So the waters are blue, and it's great, So what I was going to say is it's nice what you're doing, and I think that if more people are literally going to the public and putting this question on the counter and saying, "Can your coffee place make me a cup of coffee and I can pay you in Bitcoin?" You go everywhere. You start talking to the cashier at wherever you're at in America or anywhere, and just to have a conversation. That moment, that transaction, that's a chance to talk about it. And people are like, that question, it needs to be brought to light. And the more that people have a conversation about it, the more it goes not viral, but it goes consciously in creation by saying it. Like you always say, Thomas, that when you say it, it becomes reality. And that's why I get worried about saying certain things now. And even the things I talk about on my channel, I have to think about that now because I'm thinking, okay, there are some things I've had opinions on that have changed over using these platforms that I do not agree with and I do agree with. So I don't agree with what's going on YouTube. I don't believe that people should be silenced. I don't believe that people's content should be deleted, shadow banned, whether it's their tweets, whether it's their information. We are in a war, and you are the people, and you are also the victims, and you are also the rebellion. So that's what you choose to do with it, with your decision. So the fact that what you're doing, Max, with putting that question on the table, that is awesome. That is like you are a knight against the evil that has created the system that we live in. And people don't want to talk about this because it's just more information. It's not the Instagram, it's not the fake book like. It's not the whatever it is on Pinterest that you're looking at. That's great. But you are being contained. Your brain is being contained and it's in a dome and you're holding it, it's your, what's it called? It's your focus. It's what you're focusing on, whether it's your job and you're getting, drained from it, whether it's your relationships, whether it's your food, but most importantly, what you're doing with your time. So I think people like what you're doing, Max, is awesome. Thomas, you're doing amazing. You're creating a platform that we all need, that has been around, and it's a big backbone in what is going to be the new movement. So I just want to tell people you are the power, so yield it.
And this is leading to an interesting discussion in the chat as well. Anthony mentioned that we should tip all the waitresses with Bitcoin. And I think this is a good idea, but I also want to add a grain of salt. Tipping is important. You need to tip them anyway. And I don't think it's mean to say, like, I won't tip you unless you take Bitcoin, or to force it on them. That's not what this is about. If you say, hey, I'll tip you twice as much if you take Bitcoin, and they say, okay, I'm interested, boom, do it. It's cool. If they say, no, I don't know what that is, or maybe it's an older person or something, they're not very technical, don't be rude to them. Like, be cool to these people that need tips. And I mean, the same, to compare the tipping thing with what Max is doing. Max is choosing whether or not he's going to eat at the restaurant, whether or not they'll take the Bitcoin. The tipping, you've already eaten there. You already owe them a tip. So yeah, don't be a jerk to the waitress, but let's spread the word, because it can be very hard. I used to ask every place if they take Bitcoin, and they'd all laugh. And I think it's gotten a little better since then, but you still don't want to be just pushing this down their throat. That's not cool either. So.
Yeah, good points. And it's important to realize that paying in Bitcoin is not the main goal here. The main goal is to spread awareness. And oftentimes the cashier just say, well, okay, yeah, I've heard about that Bitcoin now a couple times. I'm really have to look more into this. And this is exactly what we want. You know, the first time someone hears about Bitcoin, they ignore it.
That
The
was weird.
second time they ignore it. The third time they'll ignore it. But eventually, you know, they will hit that point where they say, okay, now I've heard that so often, I now need to look more into this because something is there and I need to figure it out. And that's the point where we need to be. And it's not about just paying. Yes, that's of course the end goal. But mainly for me, it's about spreading awareness.
All right, Ricardo, I'm going to see if I can get you into the chat here. So we're going to hang up on you on Skype, and we're going to try to bring you into Google Hangouts. And this way we can open up the phone lines. All right. So thanks so much, Ricardo, for a good call. And hopefully we'll see you in a second here. So you can call us now on Skype at World Crypto Network, all one word. And we're going to try to keep this show going. I do have to, I have some things I have to do, so I might have to walk away for a little bit. And then we'll see how I'm feeling. And then hopefully I can come back for another hour or so. But for right now, you can give us a call on World Crypto Network, all one word on Skype. And I've just got a couple minutes left. I was hoping maybe we could get Max and Ricardo going here so I could take a break. But how are you doing, Max? Are you at work? Do you have to go back to work? That's an important question.
No, I'm actually done with work. And that's why I'm running a bit late because I just explained to a couple of coworkers how Bitcoin works, and I sent them all their first few Satoshis. And that took a while longer as expected because they were really interested in the topic and they really had some brilliant questions. And you know, so I wanted to explain it in detail to them. And that's also something, you know, it's not just the people in the stores that you can talk to, it's everyone. And especially I find it quite scary that in a bank, you know, which actually is, you know, the house of finance, that the employees are rather uneducated. And I think it's a big part because well, all the incumbent system tried to ignore Bitcoin for way too long. And I think they're now starting to wake up and realize that, wow, with an uptime of 99.9992%, it's not going away. It's going to stay. And we should better, you know, be prepared and at least get educated. And then that's something that I'm trying to do here is just education. And I think that's the first and the most important step.
Well, I love it when we get smart questions about Bitcoin. That's what I like when people, it's okay to question it. I think everyone should question it when somebody tells you about how amazing it is. And there's different ways of telling people that makes them question you more or less. But yeah, I definitely think that education is the key and just letting people ask those questions. There was a great comment here in the chat. This guy says he has a brilliant idea for all the hookers and pimps that they could get a QR code and get paid instantly. What's so interesting about that is it's actually happening on the other end of it. I can tell you from working at a company that used to run a Bitcoin ATM and from talking to my friends who have Bitcoin ATMs in their businesses, it is mainly the hookers using the Bitcoin ATMs. And they might not be using it for what you're thinking of. They're using it to turn the dollars into Bitcoin. Then I believe, I don't know, but I believe that the pimps keep the Bitcoin. So it's not exactly freeing the people there. And the pimps are then using the hookers to get around the KYC requirements. So very obvious loophole. It wouldn't take much for the cops to start hanging around Bitcoin ATMs and hassling the hookers. But it's a pretty small market probably. But interesting to see how sometimes a freeing technology can be used by a criminal person to their own nefarious ends.
Well, but isn't that the definition of a free technology? That anyone can use it. And especially criminals will use it if it is a good technology. Because as I think we said, the criminals, they are under a high risk and they really do need to be as efficient as possible. And that's why probably the first wheel was invented by a criminal to be faster. And the first shoes were used by criminals so they can run faster. And the internet was used by criminals so they can communicate better. And the same it is with Bitcoin. Criminals use Bitcoin, exactly, because it is really, really useful. And they need to be as efficient as possible. And Bitcoin is really efficient.
All right, Max, I'm going to have to take a 5-minute break. Do you want to keep talking? Maybe if Ricardo is logging into Google, he might join us here. Otherwise, We might have to end the show, and I also don't know what's going to happen after I take this break. But
Well, no, definitely. I'll hang in there and keep talking. I have like 45-ish minutes until I have to run, so we're still good.
That'd be great. Okay, I'm going to take about a 10-minute break, and I'll be right back. Thanks so much. And yeah, I turned off the calls for now because it would just ring and it wouldn't be answerable. So you're on your own, Max. Talk to the chat. Be right back.
Okay. Well, chat, how are you doing? We're gonna have a nice, interesting conversation here. So please, send your questions in the chat. And actually, I think I'm just gonna continue talking about what I talked previously, and what Thomas also talked about, which is that people try to get around the Know Your Customer and the anti-money laundering regulation, and that is absolutely true. And why is that? Well, what actually are Know Your Customer regulations? And again, I see what they are because I work with them every day. And basically, what you have to do is that every transaction that you make, regardless of the size or whom you're making it to, you have to verify and you have to prove who the transaction is coming from and whom it is being sent to. And this creates some problems. Well, of course, yes, you know who is in the economy, and therefore you can both exclude and include people. Of course, you might argue, yes, that is good, because that way we can exclude the criminals, and we can make sure that the criminals no longer can use the currency system, the money system. The question is, can you really exclude criminals, though? Because if you make a law that tells them that they cannot do something, well, they are already criminals, right? They do break the law. And if you create a law telling them to not break the law, and well, they're just going to ignore the law as well. So what happens with Know Your Customer is that somehow the criminals that do want to stay anonymous, they do stay anonymous. That is done with cash, that is done in the interbanking market, because basically what you need in order to money launder is not just a business. You need a license for the laundering, and the laundering is called it's a it's a banking license, because as soon as you do have the banking license, you no longer have to apply the Know Your Customer rules to yourself in some specific circumstances in the interbanking market. And this means that if you really do want to use the euro or the dollar as a criminal activity, you are a bank, because that's the best way that you can go around all those regulations, because you control them. And this actually turns out that many, many banks do work together with big, big cartels. For example, HSBC, that is, I think, a British bank. It's definitely a bank in Europe. They had a teller window where the people could bring in cash. And this was barred, for security reasons, or that the employees cannot break things. But what happens is that the criminals and the cartels, they tried to, bring them a bunch of cash from their drug business so they can launder it internationally with the banking transfers. But the suitcases that the criminals used for their cash were too big that they did not fit through the barred window of the teller. And what actually they then did is they destroyed the old bars, and they took them away and put in new bars with a bigger hole. And the hole was just big enough so that the suitcases that the criminals used for their money laundering actually fit through the banking window. It's funny because it's not the only case where the banks actually do work together with known criminals and known cartels to launder their money. So it's definitely going on, and it's going on in pretty much every bank. And now that we've established that the criminals themselves actually do not, they do not really apply or comply with those anti-money launderings and Know Your Customer rules, because, well, they're criminals and they just, go around them. So what happens if the criminals do not get, caught with this? Who do you actually surveil? Well, the public and everybody. And now you have to, ask yourself, is it good that banks are being forced to, by government law, by forceful intervention, to spy on its citizens, on its customers? And I think, and I hope you agree with me, that humans have a unalienable right, a inherent right that cannot be taken away, a right that is not given by anyone, but that is just there because you are human, you are sentient, and therefore you have this natural law, this natural right, and this right is for privacy, to mind your own business, to keep secrets that you do not want to have, that you do not want the public to know. You have a right to privacy, to anonymity. And this is fundamentally destroyed with the Know Your Customer regulation and the Know Your Customer rules. And maybe as an example how far this actually goes, this is an official case, and it was an official statement made by a bank, and it was the question, if there's a small businessman that usually has a monthly income of roughly, let's say 1,000, 2,000 euros, but he gets all this monthly income via wire transfer, so SEPA transfer, and he usually does not use cash. But all of a sudden, he comes into the bank and he brings 3,000 euros worth in cash. And he asks you to please put this cash into his bank account. Now, the question that the bank is asking its employees is, what should you do? Does this look like a suspicious transaction or not? And if it is not a suspicious transaction, can you just accept it? But if it is a suspicious transaction, what should you do? And, well, the first question is it a suspicious transaction? And you, as a normal person, might think, well, no, the guy has a couple $1,000 in cash and he wants to put it in his bank account. That's, normal business. That's what a bank is for. It stores your money. It stores your cash. But apparently, this already, a $3,000 cash transfer or deposit, actually counts as a suspicious activity, according to KYC regulation. And the next question is, now that we've established that it is a quote-unquote suspicious transaction, what should we do with it? And here the correct answer is, well, it is really suspicious. You should immediately escalate it to your to the authorities and to the Know Your Customer and anti-money laundering professional in the bank, and you should do that as fast as possible. You should further, try or start your investigation in where he got the money, what he's planning to do with it, if this is a one-time thing or a recurring thing, and if he cannot provide a clear and a precise answer to all those questions that you ask, well, then you have to close his account. And this, I think is really scary, that if a small businessman that brings his money in cash to his bank account, where he should store his money, at least in the financial system, in the incumbent financial system. And if that act alone is classified as suspicious and is classified as an act that should be prosecuted, I just don't think that this is good. I don't think that this is okay. And it's not just something like this, but it's in the entire financial system. So the system itself.
Remember, Max, that a lot of the reason for the anti-money laundering laws was the drug cartels of the 1970s. They want to know what your money's doing because they want to know where your money's going, right?
Well, yes, that's what they tell you. But as I said when you were gone, banks work together with drug cartels, and almost officially. I told the story that HSBC actually rebuilt their teller area so that the cash suitcases of the criminals fit through the teller window. That was an official act. And if you have a banking license, this is the license not only to print money, which banks also do, but it's the license to launder money. And many, many banks do work together with criminals to launder their money because it pays well.
And yep, I'm back, kind of. I don't know about you guys. Doctors are scary. I do what they say. I want to run the tests. So I feel a bit like Plato now. I drank what? So yeah, I'm radioactive man now, ready to scan. But let's not talk about that. Let's talk about Bitcoin or something.
Well, but I'm sure everything is going to be just fine, and
It's
it's
gonna
good, you
be
know,
good. They're gonna run tests and they're gonna find out what's wrong, and then we're gonna fix what's wrong, and it's all gonna be cool. But yeah, everyone, buy yourself healthcare, take care of yourself, get some exercise, see a doctor once a year. These are tough times. But what were you talking about there, Max? We're trying to get some calls if anybody's around on World Crypto Network, all one word on Skype, and we're seeing if we can get Ricardo to join through Google Hangouts, and we could get him on here as a co-host too. And yeah, I have superpowers. I'm radioactive. Yeah, I guess that Nura's got it. Yeah, it's a barium. It tasted like coffee. It's a little
Oh, that's
terrifying.
nice.
But
Well,
and
at least it was drinkable then.
yeah,
Medicine
hold on
always
just a
kind of
second.
tastes bad.
It was pretty good.
Yeah. And I think, know your customer, because it is such a flawed and such an immoral practice, that it is really, really, really good that Bitcoin doesn't have it. You do not need to verify yourself in order to create a Bitcoin account. As a matter of fact, you don't even need to be human to create a Bitcoin account. Your fridge can create a Bitcoin account. Your toaster can. It's just flipping a coin. It's creating a big random number. That's all you need to do in order to create a fully functional Bitcoin account. And that is completely against the current regulation, because according to the current regulation, every banking transfer, every money transfer has to be registered and reported to the government. But it hasn't always been like that. As a matter of fact, for the vast majority of human history, it has not been like that. Those know your customers and anti-money laundering regulation, they're from the 1970s. I think 1974 or something, they started with this crap in America. And what was the reason for this? Well, it's surveillance. The government wants to know how much money you have and where you keep it and what you do with it. And there used to be this thing called bank secrecy, that the banks do not talk about your finances. They do not just tell everybody about it, because it's a private matter and you do have a natural right to privacy. But many do not realize that those bank secrecy acts, the trust that you have in your, for example, Swiss banker, that he does not just give away your information. The reason why this is so important is not because your neighbor should not know how much money you make, but the government should not know how much money you make. And for the vast majority of history, the government did not know how much money you make. And this is exactly the way it should be, because, well, governments regularly steal from you. That's what taxes are. It's an involuntary payment, which I define as theft. And when the government has the knowledge of exactly how much money you make and where you get it from and on what you spend it to, then this means that it has much more power to actually steal from you. And I don't think that this is good. And that's why I really try to tell people, hey, if you have to use fiat money, which I think just, it's bad, and or at least I try to get rid of it as fast as possible. But if you have to use it, I personally only use cash. I highly advise you not to use any credit card or debit card, because it is a fundamentally broken system and it tracks everything that you do. And privacy and anonymity in your finances is really important. Otherwise, the thefts know how much money you have and they know where to get it. And this is also a problem in Bitcoin, because as we hopefully all know, is that Bitcoin is not anonymous. It is loosely pseudonymous, but the transactions can be linked and the transactions are forever public and forever unchangeable. And this means that if you do not take care with your coin selection and with your privacy, this means that everyone can know how much money you have in Bitcoin, how many Bitcoins you have, and on what wallet you keep it. And Well, I don't think that this is really good, because then you put a huge target on your back. And we try to keep this away from Bitcoin, but you have to realize that Bitcoin is so much more anonymous than the fiat money is. The fiat money is completely not anonymous. It is completely public, and they can see anything and everything that you do. As a regular bank employee, if you have your account at this bank, then I know where you get your money from. I know where you live. I know what you spend your money on. I know when you do it. I can send money out of your account at any time. I can reverse any transaction that you've made. I can close your account without notice. I can freeze it. I can, well, transfer all the money to somewhere else. And nobody is stopping me here. Yes, if I do it, I might get into trouble, but it is possible. And anything that is possible will happen. And I just don't think that this is really that good. I think that nobody should have the possibility of actually stealing your money without you knowing about it and without you giving your consent.
Well,
I
and I
don't.
think the internal job here, what you're talking about, Max, is a big problem with a lot of these corporations that we have no choice but to trust. Google and Facebook employees were trolling celebrities, right? They were checking out their accounts and reading their messages, all these kind of things. If it's not encrypted, excuse me, and if Google or Facebook owns one of the keys, your messages can always be read. Like you were saying with the banks, your credit card transactions, where you spend your money, all of this is just on a ledger, just waiting to be hacked. And once it's hacked, they know it all. So I wanted to mention something else my friend Chris Ellis used to talk about all the time, is that you can't really hide anything. Right now, you might be doing some bad thing and you might think you've got it hidden and it's all on its own. But someday, people are going to look at all of our records. They're going to look at all of our internet histories. And maybe it won't even be people, it'll be an AI. And it'll look at them in a big group or something. You won't be identified, but they're going to know everything about us because eventually they're going to crack all these encryptions and they're going to download all of our web histories and it'll all end up in some massive database somewhere. The same thing with the places that you spend your credit cards. So I think it's better to always be good, right? I don't think you want to think that you have Big Brother following you around, but I think that if you have the choice, try to be good. If you have to be bad, I guess like Max is saying, use your cash, use your Bitcoin or something. But even then, someone's going to find out. It's better to be good. Oh, looks like we have a caller. Hello. Sorry. Hello, caller. You're live on the World Crypto Network. What's your name and where are you calling from?
1 second. Hey, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Oh, hey, this is Declan from Vancouver, Canada. Just post-celebrating Canada Day. I'm at my work right now. It's real slow, but I just thought I'd call in and say hi to everyone.
Welcome aboard, Declan. Happy Canada Day. How's it going in Canada today?
It's actually going quite nice. The sun's shining, Bitcoin's up a bit. Like, everything's going pretty well right now.
Nice. Yeah, Bitcoin's up a bit. It's going good. So what'd you think? Did Satoshi Nakamoto write this book?
No, he definitely did not write the book, unfortunately. We can only hope that the pink alien Satoshi will come forth one day and show himself and speak the true words of truth to the thousands and thousands of Bitcoin users out there. But this is not a book by Satoshi, unfortunately.
I agree. The real Satoshi signs things with his keys. That's the difference.
Yeah, that's the definition. Yeah, exactly. I was just wondering, there was an article that came out by biz.org, which is basically, I guess, a bunch of banksters and people who support banks and stuff like that. It's called Cryptocurrencies Looking Beyond the Hype. I was just wondering if you've read it or looked into it at all.
Oh,
No,
yes,
I
yes, yes.
haven't.
That is a really interesting article. And well, first of all, to the BIS, it's the Bank of International Settlement. And if you don't know what they are, it's not that bad, but it's a important organization, and it's the central bank of central banks, pretty much. So it is the one place where all the national central banks go and put their money in. And if there is one single, one mastermind behind the worldwide financial system, at least what we know about, it's this one. They really do have a immense power, and they can really wage massive, massive financial warfare with countries that they do not like and with banks that they do not like. So they are really, really powerful, and they do use that power. And in one way that they use the power, we just found out, we Bitcoin people, is they, well, provide articles or those papers. And if you've read it, it's really hilarious because I do not think that I've seen a bigger pile of FUD ever. Pretty much every sentence that you read is either wrong or completely misleading. I don't think there was one true and one correct statement in that paper. And always follow the money. And of course, the central banks of central banks, that is the settlement of the incumbent system. Of course, it's going to write FUD about about the alternative to the settlement fiat, which is Bitcoin, which is a settlement layer in itself. But what were your thoughts on it? What did you think about it?
Yeah, I'm still trying to get through it now. I'm not a very businessy person, but I'm slowly starting to get more into understanding all the terminology they use. But yeah, I saw a lot of problems in it, just with how they're talking about Bitcoin and how they're talking about, oh, we have trust and all those kind of things. You know what I mean? So yeah, I didn't really agree with it. And then today, one of my favorite people who talks about Bitcoin, Reggie Middleton, he just posted basically a response to that article. It's like a 25-page response to the 25-page articles. It's a pretty good article so far from him I'm reading, talking about how, like, what the banks have done in the past and the history and stuff like that. So yeah, I think people should check that out as a response to that as well.
Yes, it's really important that we do give our rebuttals and that we do tell the people, hey, okay, this artifact and many falsehoods. And it's important that we, as the community, write those falsehoods and tell the people, no, this is not the truth. This is a straight up lie. And so it's really good that he did the write-up. I thought about doing the same, but to be honest, it was a chore getting through it because it was just so bad. And I just couldn't motivate myself to do a full write-up. But really good that he did that. And yeah, basically,
it's also important to look at the timing of this article. They waited until Bitcoin was very weak. Then they released probably one of their best pieces of FUD in years, right? This was, like you're saying, the BIS, the Bank of International Settlements, a huge central bank of central banks, very respected. And they waited till the precise moment to stab with the knife. And as you can see, it didn't do anything. Bitcoin's fine. But they're going to keep trying, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Guys, Bitcoin is under attack 24/7, and it has been ever since January 3rd, 2009. And this will not stop. This will definitely not stop. And I do not even think that we've seen the blunt of the attack so far. I think that we are still going to see much, much more attack, and there will be much, much more FUD and much more misinformation and many, many more lies. And it might get violent, and you have to realize that if you are in Bitcoin and if you're active in Bitcoin, you actually do have a really high risk of being actively attacked, not just by thugs trying to steal your money, but also by the government and by the central banks. And this is not going to be easy, and the fight is definitely not over.
Well, that's why I think it's always important to pay your taxes. If you transact in fiat, if you touch Caesar's money, pay Caesar his fee. It's only polite. If you got a system like Max where you're just using Bitcoin, it's pretty amazing. But still, just make sure to take care of your bases, keep everything covered. Don't just slack on something because you don't believe in it. A lot of other people do believe in it. So you have to work with the system we have.
Awesome.
I agree.
Thanks for taking my call. I am at work at the moment, but it's super slow, so I just thought I'd give a quick call in. And I'm listening to Crypto Network. Just keep doing what you're doing, and I'll see you guys later.
Well, thanks so much, Declan, for your call. Yeah, give us a call anytime. And if you'd like to call now, we've got the phone lines open on Skype at World Crypto Network, all one word.
And I see in the chat that Anthony Monroe, he just wrote that that's why we need to create our own bank. And I do agree with some of that statement, but not with everything. What we need to do is take ownership over our finance to make sure that we control our money. and that we do not use a money that is not controlled by someone else that might not have the best interest in our hearts. But there's the next call.
Hello, caller. You're live on the World Crypto Network. What's your name and where are you calling from?
This is Jeff from Ohio again.
Hey, Jeff, how's it going? What'd you think? Did Satoshi write that book? Are you going to buy a copy?
I have to plead innocent on this, or plead the fifth. I haven't been up to speed on what's happening out there on the social network. Is there a claim that Satoshi came out with the writing? Is that the claim?
Yeah, there's a little PDF floating around, and it's got a lot of good technical details, but nothing that you couldn't get with a lot of research. And you know how the mainstream media is. They're just so excited to hear anything from Satoshi. But did you have a comment or a question on what else we were talking about, or something you want to talk about, Joe?
Absolutely, yeah. The Satoshi thing, that's ridiculous. He didn't go through all those great lengths to protect himself just to have some goofball paper floating around. Yeah, but Max was earlier talking about his, and you were as well, conversations with people on getting them excited to use cryptocurrency. My approach has been, I try to be selective about it because it is time consuming teaching people how to use use it and to and I think there will be a killer app one day that makes it a lot easier, right, than it is now. So right now we got to be selective with our time. I've actually had about, if I count, it's on one hand, probably 4 people who I've been able to, number one, convince of the economic utility as opposed to just speculative value, that it's a, and to that, you know, you've got to get into some of the economics that we've talked about why fiat is, you know, how it robs you over time. Now people will, you know, as soon as you tell them that, they're going to point to this $20,000 price, which, by the way, was only a 3-day period of time. Actually, the biggest monthly close on Bitcoin, I think, was 13.7 or 13.8. That was the highest monthly close, the end of December. So when you throw out, when they, you know, the media throws out these large numbers, that it was reality, but it wasn't reality for very long. We will get to that number, and we'll get stable above that, but it'll take some time. But you need to convince people about the long-term trend of Bitcoin, about the Austrian economics, about how it's, you know, don't go all in on this, but have a plan to opt out of the legacy system as soon as these trillions of dollars of unfunded liabilities start coming due. You know, there's only so many parts of the equation that can be adjusted to make this thing work. And right now it's the printing presses, right? And eventually it doesn't work anymore. And I really think, you know, in my children's lifetime, for sure, that's going to come back, and it's really going to be an ugly situation. So you just convince people of the importance of having an alternative to the legacy system. And then you also have to got to take quite a bit of time to teach them the fundamentals of the technology and how, contrary to what they're going to read and see on TV and see these alternatives, that there really is only one that works, why it's superior. And that can take quite a bit of time. It's not just something that you can expect them to digest in an afternoon. But if they're serious enough, if they buy your first argument about the financial system and the need to be able to have an alternative to the legacy system, they'll spend the time. And so I've got 4 people, and I think 4 people, I could have kept my mouth shut, not told anybody. You know, two of the 4 people bought in early. You know, they bought in about 3,000 or 4,000. A couple of the other ones bought in about 10, 11, 12, but they're still convinced of the initial argument. So these short-term price movements didn't change their mind on that. And I think they've actually been accumulating some here as the prices are lower. So it's a systematic thing. So for us to believe we're going to get, you know, God bless them, but people in service industries that have bills to pay to go all in, or to start, you know, a dedicated process to this is probably not going to happen, but quickly, you know, until that killer app comes out. Now, I like the Cash App. I love the Cash App. The Cash App allows you, you know, I've been dollar cost averaging just on that, so I don't even need to use an exchange. You can just go in when you get a paycheck, buy some. You can transfer it out. You can transfer it out to your Trezor or whatever hardware wallet you use, which I do regularly. The one thing that they're missing is a transfer in. Once they get the transfer in, I'm going to find it hard to believe I'll even need a traditional bank account, although they do qualify as a traditional bank. I guess they've done all the things, but they're a little unorthodox, obviously.
What's great about Cash? Sorry. You got to mute your speaker. But what's great about Cash App too is that they offer you a credit card or a debit card, so you can have cash in there, and then you can actually spend with the legacy system, and presumably spend your Bitcoin or spend some cash that you sold from your Bitcoin. But I agree with you about telling your friends. I think that's really important. And you told 3 or 4 people, and I agree. You could have kept silent. You could have just kept this knowledge to yourself. But you got to spread it around, and it is a risk. When I told my friends and family to buy the Facebook IPO, I took it in the shorts because the thing went down instead of up. I told them to hold. I just held my position. I wish I doubled down, you know, but if it's a good investment when you start, it's a good investment at the end. And like you're saying, the legacy system has a lot of problems, and there aren't very many other places where you can place a bet or even a safety against the old system. We also want to hear from Max. Unmute yourself, and then I'm going to unmute you, caller, but please turn down the speaker. If it's not, I'll mute you again, but we'll try to get your response too. Go ahead, Max.
Definitely, really good points, and I agree that you know, Bitcoin doesn't have any marketing companies, so we, the users, have to do the marketing, and we have to onboard the people. And I think it's important that we do this. And even if you maybe do not understand the system well enough that you can explain it, and then that you can, well, work out the main reasons why it is so useful, well, you don't have to do all the legwork. You know, books out there that you can recommend, you know, recommend the videos by Andreas, recommend the books by Andreas, recommend the Bitcoin Standard by Saifedean. That's a really nice economics book. And same with economics. Yes, economics is really difficult, and it's not really accessible. And you do have to do your research until you really understand it. And if you cannot explain it, again, recommend books. For example, if you want to recommend a really accessible book about the monetary policy and monetary theory, I can highly suggest a book by Murray Rothbard, which is called "What Has Government Done to Our Money?" And I think the title itself speaks volumes. It's a really good book that explains you exactly what money is and why it is useful, and how it has historically been and how it is right now. And it's a really good case for gold and a really good case for Bitcoin. And I think he's right on. I don't think that there's anything wrong with this book. I think it's everything is really good information. So yes, I agree that we do have to onboard people, but you don't have to be the smart guy that that explains it to them. You can only, you know, recommend them the books and the resources where they can find it.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for your call. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, just one final thing. I think that that killer app just might be Twitter. If Jack Dorsey gets this thing worked out right, and he can get the Lightning Network and somehow get the Lightning channel somehow to work with your Twitter account. I mean, just think about that. Just think about how, I don't believe Facebook is going to be although they're going to probably print their own money and their own coin. I think Jack Dorsey has a solid, deep understanding of why it should be Bitcoin and why there should only be one currency on the internet. And boy, if he could just, I don't know if they're working on it. I'm not sure if that's happening, but boy, if that happens, that's what we need. That's what Bitcoin needs, is the killer app that, you know, people can go to. And, you know, the other the other point I'd like to make is if we could all somehow have a reference library of every time you talk to a banker, every time you talk to a naysayer, to help convince them. I was talking to a banker about 2 months ago, and it was a nice conversation. I've known the guy a long time, but it got hostile at one point, where he'd say it's not backed by anything. There's not enough to serve the world. Well, I've got answers for all of these things, and it'd be nice to be able to direct people to a site that has clear, as far as they're willing to research it, clear and concise information on why, on what the response is. Well, how can it serve all the people? What is it, even though it's not backed by something? Well, neither is fiat, but it is backed by math, and it can be adopted as money, as Seyfriedin has pointed out in his book very clearly. So I think, some type of a reference where the community could go to to sort of have an answer to these things that come up when people say, "Oh, it won't work. Here's why." It's not backed by anything. Well,
that sounds great, Jeff. And you know what I'd like to see is a flow chart. I've been saying I went to the medical system recently, and I overlooked one of their binders, and it was the computer science flow chart with the decision trees and the if-thens and the various things. I would love to see a website like that where you could say, my friend doesn't believe in Bitcoin because of this. And then it would take you into the argument. And if you went up out of the argument or down out of the argument, it would all be a series of connected flow charts. So I think that's a really good idea if someone's out there and they want to help Bitcoin by helping us argue with people better.
Hey,
Yeah,
I'll
really
get
good points. And
started on it. I don't have a computer background. I'll shoot it over to you guys, and then we can get something out there to help people understand it better.
That's the way it works. And remember, a lot of the reason we got cell phones that flip open like flip phones is because people watched Star Trek and they said, hey, I can build that. That would be cool. And it is cool to have a cell phone. So
yeah, and we
day.
have to do that stuff. And if
thanks
you
so
want
much,
to have
Jeff.
such a
Give us a
website,
call anytime.
then you have to produce it yourself. It's either we are going to do it or nobody's going to do it. So it's really important, to stick together and to build the stuff that you as a user actually want to have. Because if you build a product that you yourself need, also that other people are going to need it.
Definitely solving your own needs first. And it can be hard to talk to your friends that are bankers or family members that don't agree with you about Bitcoin. And sometimes you accidentally say one of your radical Bitcoin ideas and that'll make them angry. I said once that Bitcoin could change the real estate market, and that instead of doing escrow payments that take a month and require all these banks, you could just use Bitcoin. It'll probably be confirmed in an hour. You could even send the whole amount for the house or the whole amount for the down payment. You don't have to get a money wire or a bank wire or any of these things. Sometimes it makes them angry. They're not ready for this change. And that's what I was saying with the waitresses. You got to be cool with them. If they're like, I don't know that Bitcoin thing, just give me $10. Be cool. Give them 20, be cool with them, give them a chance.
Yeah. And yeah, absolutely. And there are some trigger words that make that trigger the let's say indoctrination. And if you do speak those trigger words, they're just going to close up and not be open for any further discussion. And that is not just in the Bitcoin market, but I found that out in the libertarian market. If you're an anarchist and if you believe in freedom, although we think this is a popular idea, not everyone agrees with it. And because of the really age-long indoctrination by the government, which is really sophisticated, if you say, for example, well, I don't think that people should, or if you say taxation is theft, for example, many people freak out and are like, oh, no, it's not, it's all voluntary. And then you've already lost, because now they've shut up and they will not be open for your arguments. So it's really tricky to maneuver yourself and your rhetoric around those landmines of the indoctrination. And Larkin Rose has a beautiful seminar called Candles in the Dark, which actually talks exactly about this. So how can you argue about a fringe topic without triggering the people and without making them scared and try to ignore you?
I agree, Mac. You do have to be careful, and people do have a lot of blocked off areas, and sometimes something that you think you take totally for certain Other people have a totally different view and different opinion. And sometimes it helps to kind of tiptoe in. Um, you don't want to slam them right away with your opinion and just get mad at them. That's not going to get you anywhere. If your friends don't like Bitcoin the first time you tell about it, wait a month, see if it goes up, see if there's some good news stories, and then tell them about it again. But again, if they're not interested, you can't help them. And it does lead to sad parts later on. If you have a little bit of Bitcoin, you can take a vacation and you can do some nice things. And your friends might not be able to do that. And I agree, we're down right now. So nobody that bought at 18K is taking a vacation, but it'll turn around probably. And if it does, your friends will be happy that they joined you. And if they don't join you, it'll be a bummer. But you can also maybe take them with you on the vacation, or get them a nice TV, help them out of a financial problem they might have, or just buy people lunch. I like to buy people lunch pretty much most of the time. And sometimes I don't always get those lunches back, but I don't care. It's good to feed.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting points you bring up, Thomas. And I agree. You have to be careful and respect other people's opinion. Just because you have a strong opinion about something, number one, it doesn't necessarily have to be true. Humans err, and we might all be completely wrong about Bitcoin. And turns out it is a huge Ponzi scheme. We don't know that. It might happen. And opinions, and everyone is entitled to their own. And if you force your opinion onto others, then actually you are the evil person here, because you take their free will and you take their choice of ignoring you and of not accepting your opinion, and that is not that good. So you should really be careful and don't force other people to do what you want, because, well, if they do not want to do it, then they don't have to. If they want to stick with the euro and with the currency that is inflated and all that kind of stuff, well, then do. But yeah, don't force people.
And we're seeing an interesting comment in the chat. Rolando says, you can try to tip them in gold, but most won't accept it. And what I think is fascinating about gold, if you do that comparison, if I'm tipping you with gold in a restaurant, you have no way of testing that gold, right? It could be a gold bar with lead on the inside. They have no idea. But although they wouldn't understand Bitcoin or know the system, if you compare the two, if I tipped you in Bitcoin, there's no way I can counterfeit it. There's no knowledge that you have to have other than that you have a legitimate Bitcoin wallet and you can see the transaction on the blockchain and you wait for at least one confirmation. There's no way to counterfeit it. You don't have to do any tests, any chemical tests, visual tests. There's no expert needed. So when they do say they do want to take Bitcoin, it is very cool, and they can just have it. And if it's in their wallet, it's their possession. They have to choose what to do with it. So it's very cool.
Yeah, really good point that you bring up. And that is one of the big issues in gold, that you cannot verify it. And you can only verify it if you melt the coin or the bullion, and if you melt it down completely, check for purity, and then recast it. And this is the only way you can, really check if it is pure gold, and that is really expensive. Well, but what happens with Bitcoin is that in every block verifies every UTXO in the set, and if one is created fraudulently. And so every 10 minutes, all the Bitcoins are quote unquote being melted down and checked for their purity, and then recast. And this is done every 10 minutes, and you don't even have to do it. The strengths in Bitcoin.
And it seems like they're agreeing in the chat. They're saying, yeah, the noobs won't believe in Bitcoin and they won't believe in gold. But I think that's going to change. I think in about another 5 years, when you tip somebody in a restaurant, they'll love to take your Bitcoin. They still won't take your gold. Even if you have those little bars that you can break off the little pieces of gold. I saw some of those at Pork Fest a long time ago, and I thought they were really neat, but it's still the same kind of thing. Maybe I just have a company that makes fake divisible gold bars just to screw people over. People do horrible things. You really have to keep an eye on them. And that's what's so great about Bitcoin. It's totally voluntary. If you get some money in Bitcoin, you have it in your account, it's yours. It can't be taken from you. And like I'm saying, it can't be counterfeited. If it's sent and it's on the chain and it's got a confirmation, it's done. That's it. Same thing for Lightning Network when it comes around. Lightning Network will be just like Bitcoin in this way. It'll be when you send it, it's there. When you get it, you have it. And if you want to cash it out to Bitcoin, or if you want to send it around to buy something on Lightning Network, it's all there for you, and it's totally voluntary, and it's opt-in. And I think a lot of people are going to get into it in the future. But I'm and you can give
I'm
us
there, Thomas. How are you doing?
Go ahead, Max.
Sorry, someone just talked to me on the street.
No worries. Busy times, man.
But Thomas, I actually do have to get going, because now I'm standing in front of a restaurant where I'm going to meet someone that is in a network of small to medium-sized German Mittelstand companies. And we're going to talk a bunch about how we can implement Bitcoin with all the Mittelstand companies here in Germany, and how we can strengthen them, and how we can bring them closer and tell them about the advantages of Bitcoin. So, you know, Bitcoin all evening long. You cannot shut me up about talking about Bitcoin.
Well, that sounds great, Max. Have a good time at your dinner, and keep spreading the word about Bitcoin. That's excellent. This might also be a good time. Go ahead, Max.
Oh yeah, I just want to say thank you for having me on. Thank you for letting me call in and blabbering on about Know Your Customer and Bitcoin. So thank you very much, and everyone have a great night, whatever you're doing, and see you all next time. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks so much, Max. And thanks to all the callers we had today. I'll probably try to do a little reading of To Satoshi with Love. I wish I had some more water. Hold on just a sec. Let me see if I can do something about that. I'm also getting near to the point where I'm not going to be allowed to drink water anymore. So that's something to look forward to, right? And then tomorrow, my next test is early in the morning, so I probably won't be able to do this show and hang out with you guys tomorrow. But hopefully, if I'm feeling better, maybe later in the day, will be good. The doctors aren't curing me yet, but they are making me do a lot of fun tests. So I'm learning a lot about the medical system. Like I've told you guys before, I never was much into cars, and I never was much into doctors. And the car thing, I've pretty much gotten by. I don't need to know that much. I can change the oil, or check the oil. But the medical thing comes back on you, man. You got to learn about these medical things, and you got to treat your body right and do things in moderation and eat a good diet. Hopefully you can take care of yourselves. And like I was telling Max, because he's a young guy, I was like, Max, don't get old. Don't get old, Max. But I'm getting old. I don't have any other choice about it. I'm just going to hang in there and do these tests and follow the doctor's orders and try to get better. But let's go back to Satoshi with Love so I can have another nice distraction before I go distract myself with video games. We mentioned Satoshi Nakamoto, a pink space alien, crashed his spaceship into John Front's house, met John's friend Mara. Mara doesn't believe he's Satoshi, forced him to prove it, forced him to code, and now they're happily working on the Sidechains project. Donald Trump is involved too. This book was written in November of 2016, a very political time. The election was going on every day as I wrote this, and I had no choice but to involve him. He doesn't like Bitcoin. He doesn't like space aliens, but he's also just a caricature. This is just a fun book. It's a fun story. So we talked to Trump, and we talked to Hillary a little bit. She just lost the election here in the book. And Trump has just said, well, you see, Mr. Nakamoto, we have met before. Because the pink alien has been captured by Eric Trump and taken to his father's office. But here's a little bit of To Satoshi with Love. Mara's landlord had came by and managed to get the door back on its hinges, but it still didn't feel right in Mara's place without Satoshi, so she and John had gone back over to his house, which still had the Ethereum-shaped spaceship sticking out of the roof, but it had quieted down since the media universally believed the Chain River hype story. It fit too perfectly. A Bitcoin company trying to get press for its new product. Actually, I don't know if this is the right place to read. Did I jump ahead? I think I jumped ahead. Now I have no idea. See, I'm reading this at two different sections, so it's confusing the neff out of me. Now I have no idea where we are. I'm gonna have to go back and figure it out. I'll give you guys another reading tomorrow, and I can assure you that I am working on the audiobook of this. That's why it's so confusing to me, because I'm reading it at 2 different sections. But yeah, I just don't know where we are, and I don't want to read ahead and ruin it for you guys. And some of you don't even like book readings either. But let's do another book reading maybe later today. Hopefully, I'll be feeling well, and then tomorrow. 50-50 on the morning show. Maybe I can try to get Max and Ricardo to do a morning show. That'd be fun. We haven't quite gotten the Skype access decentralized yet. We're still centralized on that. But we are looking to expand the Bitcoin talk show format and the World Crypto Network. Like I always told people, this is kind of an open source Bitcoin project, much like Bitcoin. People come and go, they contribute. I tell them to promote their own things and sadly explain we don't have money to pay them. But eventually the goal is to get a bunch of people doing a bunch of Bitcoin shows 24/7, 365. And like Max says, it's really fun to have a place where you can call in and get some opinions on Bitcoin and share your thoughts. And just to have a Bitcoin kind of a helpline, or even just a Bitcoin comment line, because a lot of people freak out with the price or something like that. Price of Bitcoin looks like Bitcoin average died, but it looks like it was in the 6619s. So still doing good. Remember to support the show, send a Bitcoin donation, subscribe to the World Crypto Network Patreon or the Mad Bitcoins Patreon, where I've been doing their Snapchat lens things to give you some behind the scenes access. But that's about it for this episode of Bitcoin Talk Show. I'm going to go play Watch Dogs on the PlayStation 4. It's a super fun game. It's kind of like Grand Theft Auto, but you get to hack things. There's also the first one's in Chicago and the second one is in San Francisco. So I'm playing my way back home, but learning about Chicago today. So thanks so much for watching. Until next time, bye-bye.